live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. Jim Browdy has a day off. Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen is filling in again for Jim. Hello, Jared Bowen.
Good morning. Again, great to be with you, Marjorie.
I know, gorgeous day down here at the
beautiful.
Boston Public Library. But not so glorious in all other fronts. As you just heard Judy Ewell say in the news, the average price of gasoline in Massachusetts has now reached $5. Forget the stock market. The definitive economic indicator of our time is, of course, gas prices. And don't forget the avocado. Jared, just a few years ago, headlines famously urged millennials in particular to stop buying avocado toast if they wanted to buy a house. Well, now inflation is so high, both items are nearly out of reach. A carton of avocados, did you know this, has jumped. That poor restaurateur that was on the front page of the Globe today, the price of avocados has doubled since 2021, now averaging nearly $80, according to CNN. Gas, as I just said, above $5, or at least hovering at $5 in Massachusetts. More out in California, over $6, sometimes $7 out there. We've talked a lot in this show about the rising cost of housing for prospective homeowners and renters alike. So we want to check in with you. Has the Hass avocado become too much of a hassle? Are you dropping?
That's a good one.
Yeah. Are you dropping some other more essential items from your grocery list, not to insult the avocado? Or are you driving less to avoid filling up the tank again? How are you managing the staggering cost of living? Give us a buzz, 877-301-8970. You can call or text at that number, 877-301-8970. You can also tweet us at Boss Public Radio. The number to call or text again, 877-301-8970. It is, I mean, the story of the Globe today was just talking about going out to eat. And if you can afford to go out to eat, you're not broke, obviously. But, I mean, it was kind of nice to go out for dinner. For a lot of families on a Friday night, you go out and get pizza, you go out and get pasta. The cost of going out to eat has now become astronomical. One of our staff said it cost her $8 for a slice of pizza and a soda.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we have the expectation that some prices were going up. You see transportation, you see gas prices, but the pace at which it's escalating now. I mean, what did Judy just say? 4 cents in the last 24 hours or so. And from week to week, day to day now, you go to the supermarket and the prices are just escalating so quickly, it seems incomprehensible. So it is really reaching this critical mass, which is, of course, one of the reasons we're talking about this. But add it all together, this is a huge burden to bear. The price of inflation versus the cost of wage increases, it's double. Yeah, I mean, that was the one of the nice things, that we thought the employees had more power during the pandemic and they were able to up their lifestyle because they're making more money, but not anymore because everything else is costing so much. How are you doing this? So how do you plan, as I just said, I mean, people that were trying to save for a house, how can you save for a house? I mean, I think you have to move to like Mississippi these days. You want to find a house and just commute. How do you save for a house? How do you save for anything? Are you not buying clothes? Are you not going on your vacation? Are you planning your summer vacation even though it's going to cost you $5 a gallon? Are you accelerating your efforts to purchase an electric car? That assumes you can purchase an electric car because they're not cheap either, and there's not a lot of charging stations all over the place, not to mention enough charging stations on the highways. I at least have a hybrid. I get great mileage. I feel really happy about that now, Jared. So that's why we'll start carpooling. Or you can hop on the back of my bike.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
right. This could be the big incentive to get everybody out of their cars and out of their bikes. So anyway, 877-301-8970 is the phone number that you can call us at or text us at, and we'll read as many texts as we can. And by the way, you guys had Bill McKibben last week on, and this a lot of the call now is for us to be doing more oil drilling, which is very upsetting to a lot of environmentalists because, of course, that increases our carbon footprint, it increases our fossil fuel problem. We're already seeing, the terrible effects of climate change, and I think there's a big fear among environmentalists that this price of gasoline will cause us to maybe eventually get lower prices at the expense of the economy. At the expense of the environment.
Which is why there's also the simultaneous conversation about ramping up electric car production, making sure that there are more stations throughout the country, which is, of course, part of the Build Back Better plan, but also rebates kind of started to wither on the vine in terms of buying electric vehicles, and so there's a call for the reinstatement of those too. But this is really everywhere, every aspect of your life, where you look at it, the prices are rising. I was just looking
looking at booking a hotel in Montana for my annual vacation. I'm paying Manhattan prices for it. It's just, so there's no way you can escape this at this point.
So let's go to Margot in New Hampshire. Thank you for calling.
Hi, it's Margot from Hancock.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Fine. The dioramas came from from Cy Montgomery's. They were little animals, right, Margot?
Yep. Dioramas, yeah, made out of peeps.
Yep.
So I definitely am trying to cut back on driving, but where we live, there's no public transportation, so that's a challenge. But the biggest thing is I am not grocery shopping every week like I usually do. I just, go once and then try to stretch it out for 2 weeks. And I find I spend a little less. The end of the 2 weeks, I'm getting really creative with my meals, depending on what's still in the freezer and in the cupboard. But the price of food, I live alone, and it's just gone through the roof, and I can't afford to go grocery shopping every week anymore.
Yeah, that is kind of depressing to have to make stuff last for 2 weeks, Margot. No?
Yeah. Well, it's hard. I'm looking at it as a challenge, Marjorie. I'm looking at it as, and there's lots of fresh produce right now, and friends have gardens, so I'm mooching off of them. And, you might have to pick up milk in between the 2 weeks or eggs, but for the most part, it works. It works out.
Margot, thank you very much for the call. Paul from Worcester just emailed and said the higher prices will result in record high profits for the companies like oil and food suppliers. They're not only allowed to fleece us, but encouraged mostly by Republicans. Nothing will stop it, so I'll invest in those companies and basically get cash back. If boycotting worked, I'd do that. But since it won't, I'll play by the rules Congress sets. Diane from Fairhaven.
Hi, Diane.
Hi, guys. I just passed my local Cumberland Farms. It's $4.99 and 9 cents per gallon. And my son lives in the San Diego area, and he's paying over $7, and he commutes a round trip of 45 miles. And I try to send him $50 a week. I mean, it won't get him very far, but it's hard because I'm trying to keep my own car on the road so I can work. And thankfully, he's got a union job, and he's moving up in his apprenticeship. He gets pretty good pay, but it's all going into gas, and that sucks.
Yeah, it's really upsetting. Let me ask you something, Diane. Is this going to change? I mean, there's a lot of stories now that are saying that this is going to really impact people's voting. There's a lot of midterms. We're going to talk to John King from CNN later in the show. There's midterms going on in 6 or 7 states today. That people are blaming Joe Biden and the Democrats for this, and they may even switch their vote. Is this going to impact your vote?
No, not at all. I'm hugely Democratic candidates from my town on up to our Congress. So it's not going to change my vote. And one of my really curious things is I know that we have a huge, huge amount of oil for a rainy day way up north near the North Pole. Why aren't we using that? Why are we still sending our young people to war to fight over oil?
Yeah.
And
Diane, thank you for the call. I think that Biden dipped into the strategic
Some
oil
of that has
reserve.
been tapped already.
Yeah, it has been tapped already.
So that's what's extraordinary about this moment, too, is that they're saying gas prices probably won't start to come down until early winter if they do come down. So this is after this has already been applied. And I know another thing we want to talk to John King about is the messaging. What is the president saying and doing about this, and how is this being communicated? Because a lot of people feel like they're not getting answers about where there is an end in sight.
And what is really sad, and we've talked about this with Bill McKibben again, because I'm obsessing over the impact of the high gas prices and the environment, that we could be heating our homes right now with heat pumps, that we could be sending these heat pumps to countries that want to become less dependent on Russian oil. It's like we have the technological solutions and we just don't do it. Listen to this. My husband and I are college educated. We have 5 young children. I don't work as 2 kids are at home. Plus, how can I when the other kids are constantly sent home with the sniffles? That's a good point. She says, we're in debt, living off credit cards. I had to visit a food pantry for the first time last month. I'm embarrassed, and I'm now trying to fight the electric company over a disconnection deadline. That's from Anonymous in Rhode Island.
And as our last caller was just saying, she's sending $50 a month to her son. You think about it, $50 gets you nowhere these days. How is that even possible? Just $50 is a lot of money, but not anymore.
Well, you think if you have a $10
gallon tank and gas is $5, I think that's $50 to just fill the tank, isn't it?
Yeah. We have the two non-math people.
Shows how good we are in
hosting the
math,
show.
Jared. That's really pathetic.
Let's go to Christina in Randolph. Hi, Christina.
Oh, hi, good morning. So I'm doing a couple of things to stretch my gasoline. One thing is I've emptied out the trunk of my car, and, so I don't have a lot of excess weight in the car. The extra 20 pounds I put on with COVID-19, that's weight enough. And the other thing is I Googled how much gasoline, a gallon of gas weighs, and it weighs 6 pounds. So instead of filling my tank, I only have my tank half full. And that saves me 50 pounds because I have an 18-gallon capacity tank. And then, of course, you want to keep your tire pressure up. And I'm driving the speed limit. And I can't believe, I have to go in the slow lane because people are, flying past me. And
Christina,
one thing that Consumer Reports said, I use cruise control all the time, and they say to not use it when you're going up a hill, which I notice, because the cruise control kicks in and it really accelerates the car, and that's when you use a lot of gas.
Christina, you're really working the edges here. I'm very impressed.
Yeah.
I'm going home today and emptying out the trunk. Thank you very much, Christina. That's
And
great.
then we're going to go into the backyard because that's where we're spending all summer. We're going to be planting, so we have our harvest for the fall.
Yeah. One of our staff says she's on the exact same page as Christina. She never puts more than $20 in now and hopes she can find cheaper gas somewhere else and not waste money and just cruise in neutral at every downhill. I think you have to have a stick shift to do that, don't you? Cruise in neutral at every downhill.
Oh, you can shift into neutral.
Can you shift into neutral in a regular car? I didn't know that. Do you drive a stick shift?
I do not.
I used to drive a stick shift. That is another way to save money.
It is.
Is to drive a
Much
stick
more,
shift.
yeah,
Although if you
economical.
are stuck in traffic all the time, as many of us are in Boston, it's not so great to
a
have
lot
a
of
stick shift, is it?
lurching.
A
No.
lot of lurching back and forth, a lot of times on the clutch. 877-301-8970 is the number to call us on or text us on. How are you surviving this inflation thing? Is it making you really despondent about the chances for the Democrats because Biden is getting blamed for this, as presidents always do, even though there's not that much you can do about it? On the other end, if the Fed keeps raising interest rates, as they probably will, that's going to make it even more difficult to borrow money to buy something. That's going to impact the economy too. But I remember the only way they got inflation in control years and years ago when Carter was president was a massive increase in interest rates by the Fed. They were up to 15, 16, 17%. What are they now to buy a house? About 5 or 6%?
Around 5%, yeah.
Yeah, and it was 3% just a short time ago. Mark in Westwood, what do you think?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Fine, thanks.
Hey, good. Hey, listen, I will believe that people actually care about the price of gas when I see them getting out of their car and walking into Dunkin' Donuts, McDonald's, Starbucks, the bank, anywhere that has a drive-through. Those drive-through lines are not shortened at all, and that's people are making their choices, but I don't do the drive-through.
Apparently, you don't do the drive-through, Mark. I bet you're in great shape, Mark, out there, right? You're running marathons to the side and stuff like that.
Yeah, running really, really hard to get into that Dunkin' Donuts to get in line.
Yeah. Well, didn't somebody tried to ban drive-throughs a few years ago because they were concerned about gas and people idling so long in their cars? I mean, it is, if you go to Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks in the morning, you are looking at one long drive-through line. Mark, thank you very much for the call.
We are a habitual society. It is difficult to change our ways.
Yeah. Remember when you used to be able to sit outside? They have one up there on Route 1, right? In heading up north.
Where they bring their
Yeah,
to your half rolled down window.
Yes, it's a drive-through. The whole thing.
Yep.
You just sit in your car,
Drive in,
and they sit in your car, and they put a little tray right on your windowsill, and you can eat there. Do you go to the drive-throughs? Do you get out of the car?
I usually get out of the car because I look at those lines and I just don't want to wait in the line. I guess that's part of it.
That's another thing, though. Do you want to spend all this money on coffee, buying coffee out now? right?
No, and this is what I'm saying. Even the things that the basic things that you take for granted, the prices are really escalating. But we have one texter who's making a really good point,
What?
that we're hearing about all these prices rising. And I think they're not saying this, but I know this is what we keep hearing about, is the cost for transportation, the cost of fuel is rising, which is fueling all of this. But do we actually know this, or is it price gouging?
Well, a lot of people think it is price gouging. A lot of people do think it's price gouging. I don't understand enough about the way the oil markets work, but supposedly we have plenty of oil in the United States of America, so I suspect there's at least some price gouging.
Well, as the first caller mentioned too, if we're tapping our own supply and we don't see this going down, which was supposed to happen, right? When we heard that, I guess, late winter, early spring, after the war in Ukraine started, that this would kind of temper everything, and it certainly has not, as we're seeing, with
No,
$5 a gallon.
and I think the Europeans are in even more dire straits than we are. They've always paid more for
Always,
gas.
yeah.
They're paying a lot more, and that's why you see those little teeny tiny cars if you ever go to visit Europe. But they're already pledging to give up a lot of Russian oil by the first of the year, so they're going to have to find another way to heat their homes over there.
Well, they're kind of ahead of us, especially in technology and heating
Oh,
and
so
the electric
far
cars.
ahead.
Yeah.
So far ahead. Barbara from Wakefield, what do you think?
Hi, Barbara.
Hi, thanks, guys. Well, I've got a daughter who's getting married, and it's just like outrageous, the cost of weddings, and she's kind of actually a little bummed out about the amount of money I can give to her, but hey, with the cost of everything rising, what are you going to do?
Is it just the total cost that you see rising?
Well, everything. I mean, of course, food is rising, and the cost of food rises, so they want more money for that. The cost of gowns. I mean, everything. It's just the whole ball of wax is going up.
No, Barbara, I went through that before.
Crazy.
My poor daughter, I always say she had a little teeny tiny pandemic wedding, and she did. On the bright side, when you only have 20 people come to the wedding, it cuts down on your cost dramatically. But it is unbelievable how much it costs you to get married. Barbara, I've been to weddings like on a Tuesday night, which is not really the time you want to go to a wedding, right? Because you have to go to work the next day, and it kind of cuts down who's going to come. But you know why people do that? Because it's cheaper. At the same wedding that I went to on a Tuesday night, you know what they did? They ran out to Home Depot the morning of the wedding, and they bought flowers in pots, and they brought them and put them all around on the tables. And then they also had beer and wine. Now, that can be very disappointing to people who are ready to get a martini or a cosmopolitan at their wedding. But these are all ways people save money on weddings because they are astronomical.
And I always feel like those smaller weddings, the more DIY weddings, they're always the most fun.
Yeah.
They just seem more organic. There's less pressure. There's less just stuffiness and aura around them. And I have just always found them to be
But would you want to get married on a Tuesday afternoon?
Who cares?
I guess. It seems like you want to be able to at least, make a weekend of it kind of
I
thing.
have a friend who was just married at City Hall. She was so blissful and telling me all about it.
Really?
And I just think that it's so lovely to do that, especially now.
Did she go out for dinner?
I don't know what she did for dinner.
Yeah, well, you got to go out for dinner after you get married at City Hall. Okay, we're talking about inflation. We're going to keep talking about it.
All right, stick around. More of your calls and texts are next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
From the GBH Newsroom, a new series, Priced Out, the fight for housing in Massachusetts.
Since 2011, the price of a single-family home skyrocketed. In Brockton, 155%. East Boston, 226%.
The increasing cost of housing and the people struggling to stay in their communities.
When somebody is unstable in their homes, everything is unstable.
On GBH 89.7 and at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Tools of the Mind, the research and play-based curriculum, offers pre-K and K teachers tools designed to help ensure children develop cognitive, social, emotional, and self-regulation skills. toolsofthemind.org. And Babson College. You can make your dreams a priority with their part-time MBA. Applications due by June 24th for scholarship consideration for fall 2022. babson.edu/part-time.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live at the Boston Public Library, as we do every Tuesday and every Friday. We are also streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. Jared Bowen is in for Jim Brady. Okay, we're talking about how everybody's basically really feeling the heat here. The rising price of everything, gas, housing, avocados. I happen to like avocados. Everything. What have you dropped from your shopping list? How are you making your gas tank go that extra mile? We had a caller earlier who's emptying out the trunk, keeping her tires, very well aired up so that they use less gas, and also only filling up partially so she can try to find, for the weight thing.
The weight, yeah.
Which I'd never even thought about, and also hoping to find cheaper prices elsewhere. Anyway, 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970. You can call us or text us at that number. You can also tweet us at Boss Public Radio. Have you given up avocados, Jared?
I haven't given up avocados. Just when we learned one avocado a day is going to make a tremendous health difference for you, now we realize it's a luxury food item.
I know.
These poor restaurants having to charge $10 for a side of guacamole, $10, which would cost more than a lunch a year ago.
So we have a text. I really hate the idea of grocery pickup because I feel lazy, but it really saves money on impulse buying. My fridge is the essentials, and that's it. Prior to this, I always had a busting fridge, and I had a lot more waste. I mean, that is one thing true about just ordering and picking it up online.
That's the optimistic way to learn from this, is that we can change our lives, learn a little bit, reconstruct a little bit, rebuild. So we go to Karen in Taunton. Hi, Karen.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I just wanted to give my 2 cents worth for a senior's retired and on a fixed income. And this is really... I can't tighten the belt anymore. I'll suffocate. So,
Karen.
It was sticker shock because I try to only go grocery shopping every other week. And this past week, it was like my eyeballs popped out. And that was just within 10 days. So, and the gas, too, with my car, I don't let it go below half a tank. And so it doesn't seem like a shock. Besides, I don't go anywhere. Other than my daughter lives up north, and I've cut that back too. So it's I have to thank God for Facebook and FaceTime. So there's ways to get around it, but with the food, and I agree with you. The text that you read about pick up your groceries, order online. That's my next thing I'm going to do. So it's. I just wanted to give my 2 cents. And
Karen, thank you for the call. I mean, I think particularly if you want a fixed income, it is really difficult because there's nowhere to move, right? You just have a fixed amount of money. But we're getting the stop complaining thing from Kevin and Gardner, who says, I take the whole inflation situation in stride and just thank my lucky stars I'm not in Ukraine. They're the ones that have the real problems. We should stop complaining, America. And, I get that. I mean, obviously. But on the other hand, I think we have lived with low inflation and low interest rates for so long. I mean, basically, it was back in 2008 that we had inflation, and it was only brief then. And there's the predictions that this is not going to be brief, right?
Well, there's a whole generation who hasn't really lived through anything like this before. And especially if you're on a fixed income, I've heard people talking about this already, that there's a very legitimate fear of how long this is going to be sustained. Because if you're on a fixed income, you cannot change that. And so if you don't know how long this is going to exist, that's a frightening prospect.
Let's go to Alan and Wayland. Thanks for calling, Alan.
Hi there. I guess the first thing is that in order to prepare yourself, to weather through this, what I did was about a year and a half ago, the interest rates on fixed rate mortgages were under 3%.
Yep.
So I kind of looked ahead and I said, I'm going to refinance my mortgages. And I did that, and now they're fixed. So, the single biggest expense is your housing. And so, and that overshadows gas and anything else. So I just want to say, looking forward, that you should always be looking for very low interest rates and try to refinance fixed when you can, okay? And the second point is that, whether Joe Biden is at fault for the gas prices, well, the American people have very short-term memories, and don't put together lots of events and sequences of cause and effect. And the American economy is like a very large ship. So you turn the rudder, and it takes a long time to change the direction and momentum of the ship. So Biden couldn't be at fault even if he tried. This is the result of many, many complex things. But I want to point out that he had Build Back Better, which was a bill to help the American people finally. It wasn't a tax break for the rich. It was a tax break for everybody else. And it was voted down by the Republicans. And so it's not like he hasn't tried. He tried very, very hard to try to fix things. So I guess that's what I want to say.
Yeah, Alan, thank you very much for the call. We're going to talk to John King later on today when he comes on about the primaries going on around the state. And Biden's getting a lot. I mean, his approval ratings are very, very low. People are unhappy with him. And I do wonder why he hasn't tried Build Back Better in pieces. Why not try one thing? Why not try the child care tax, the child tax credit, or why not do child care, or why not do something?
Well, I think he saw only a matter of time and thought that he could just make a go at it. He was billed as the great negotiator, was he not? And that he could work with Congress and he could get this done. And if he was to do a piecemeal, how much of it could he have gotten done? But obviously we're seeing that's a strategy that didn't necessarily play out. And regardless of how we got here, he's the person people are paying attention to for how we're going to get this first through this, but then out of this.
We have a lot of dedicated Democrats on our show here. This is from a dedicated Democrat who says this is orchestrated by the Republican Party to destroy union growth, make the Democrats look bad. January 6th proved one thing. They care only about money, not country, not God, money only. So there you go. Dedicated Democrat there.
Let's go to, Lisa
ahead.
in the air.
Yep.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi. So I had called previously when I was living in Texas as an artist.
Oh, I remember your
And
call.
I had yeah. So my fiance proposed 1 week before I left, and I had that in an event planner. So I have some tips. I mean, I am getting married on a Tuesday.
Oh, there you go.
I'm happy about it. And
wait a minute.
Yeah.
This is to save money.
Well, to save money, yes. As an event planner, I'm not paying Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or even Thursday prices. It's not happening. So I picked a Tuesday. I picked the longest day of the year, so people have plenty of time to get home during the and picked like a decent early hour so people who work the next day can make it. I think only one person can't make it because of work.
Yep.
And the vendors, I just hardballed the vendors, and they worked with me. Of course, this was back when I was in Texas in the fall. But, this wedding is much more economic than I thought it could be.
So how much?
Right now, go ahead.
How many people you having and how much going to cost?
Okay, so I'm having, including myself and my future husband and a toddler, I think we're at 36.
Grand.
And
no people.
Do you want everything or just
36
just
people?
I even got a great deal on the dress.
You did? Good.
So in Texas, there was a boutique there, and apparently I was the size of the model ones, like on the ones for people to try out.
Oh,
and
good.
And she had discontinued. So I got this beautiful Spanish lace designer dress that probably costs, I don't know how much usually, but I got it for a pretty good price considering how expensive wedding is. And I didn't have to worry about whether or not it was going to make the 6-month journey across the ocean to get to me.
Okay,
So.
Lisa, you're evading the bottom line here. 36 people. How much? What are you going to give them to eat? You're going to give them booze, and how much is it going to cost?
I'm going to give them, it's at a nice place. So just for the venue, I think it's going to be depending on how much they drank, I think it's going to be 7 to 8.
That's good, right?
7,000 to 8,000 for the whole wedding?
Yeah.
For the food?
Well, not including the vendors, and the dress. That might be more about 10-ish or a little over. And
Okay, so
I
the
don't
whole
know how much
thing,
they're
the
gonna
whole
drink.
thing, Lisa, we're trying to get to the whole thing. What is this wedding going to cost? We're running out of time here. Give me a number.
Not including the hotel block. Let's go with, I think about 10 or 11.
10 or 11,000. Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad. Lisa did a very nice job. 36 people, 10 grand.
The alcohol bill
Tuesday
will
night.
be low because it's a school night,
That's
so
right.
people can't drink a lot.
That's right. You can't go crazy if you've got to go to school the next day or have to go to work the next day. Well, we haven't solved this problem, Jared, I would say.
We're just at the beginning,
We're just
unfortunately,
I think we're at the beginning.
I don't know. Well, you can store avocados in the refrigerator, so they'll last a little bit longer.
And I have stored them many times in the
always
refrigerator.
do.
I love
Yeah.
my avocados.
Yeah.
Avocado toast. What do you put in your avocado toast?
I put feta cheese and some chili pepper and a little salt and pepper.
La-di-da.
And radishes.
Radishes. Okay,
Yep.
Jared. Figured you'd put radishes on there.
Well, you need a crunch. That's why.
Okay.
All right, I'm done with this.
We're
and
done
you
with
already.
this. Yes, we are.
Coming up, we'll get a preview of the Celtics Game 3 after a disappointing loss on Sunday from Sports Authority, Trenni Kusnierek. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
Next time on The World, classical music has a problem. Orchestras worldwide hire more men than women. In Colombia, a conductor is trying to change that.
At the end, we are artists too. We are musicians too. We have the same possibilities that the men.
Inside the Bogota Philharmonic Women's Orchestra, next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and Plymouth Patuxent Museums. You can find special activities, events, and exhibits related to the 75th anniversary at plimoth.org. This message funded by the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism. And The Huntington, presenting Common Ground Revisited. The Pulitzer Prize-winning classic comes to theatrical life, now playing at the Huntington Calderwood/BCA. huntingtontheater.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live as we do every Tuesday and Friday from the Boston Public Library, and we are also streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. Okay, we're going to be talking to Trenni Kusnierek in just a second. I see her there on Zoom. Hello, Trenni. And we are going to start, of course, with the Celtics. Now, to get people in the mood here, Trenni, we're going to play the end of this disaster of the Celtics-Warriors Game 2. Here it is.
It was that 35-14 third quarter that blew it open for Golden State. And this time, Boston did not have a response.
No, they did not have a response. I think a lot of us just turned the TV set off because it was too painful to keep watching this slaughter in the last 2 quarters of Game 2. So where are we, Trenni Kusnierek?
Well, you can look at it 2 different ways. And if I'm like half whispering, it's because my puppy is sleeping, which is why I'm not at the library today.
You have a puppy?
I got a puppy on Sunday, and I'm hoping she sleeps through this whole thing. And I don't go out there and there's not like a big pile of pee on the floor in her like little pen area.
Congratulations. What kind of puppy?
We got a golden retriever. Her name is Winnie. And she's the sweetest, but she's not house trained yet because we've had her like 48 hours.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Well, I understand. You have to stay home. You have to stay home with the puppy. So get back to the Celtics. What are we prospects here? That was painful.
So you can look at it 2 different ways.
Yep.
You can look at it and say, okay, they were 1 bad quarter, being the 3rd quarter of the second game, away from being up 2-0 on the Warriors, a prohibitive favorite in this. Or you can look at it as they were 1 good quarter away, the 4th quarter of the first game, to being down 0-2 to the Warriors. And it just probably depends if you're a pessimist like me. You look at it as you got a lot of points and a lot of contributions from guys like Al Horford and Derek White that maybe you're not going to get in the same way again. And you might need going forward if you want to beat the Warriors. But if you're an optimist, you look and say, role players and bench players have been fantastic for the Celtics all postseason long. Somebody will come up again, and they were just 1 really bad 3rd quarter away from being up 2-0 on the Warriors. So it depends. Are you a Trenni or are you a Jared? Because you seem like a positive guy.
I am. And I'm hopeful that they're not going to be choking here.
Well, the thesis is that they blow it in the third quarter with great regularity. Isn't that the thesis, Ms. Sports Reporter?
I mean, 4 times, at least 4 times in this postseason, they have had horrific third quarters. I mean, there's a reason, and this is the reason I picked Warriors in 6, because my biggest frustration with the Celtics and the hump I feel like they have not been able to get over is playing with a lead. And I mean, not necessarily a lead in a game, but a series lead, playing sort of with house money, and just an inconsistency. And it's not even like, you know, in that game, in game 2 on Sunday night, they were sloppy. They were lazy with possessions. I mean, they were down 23. And actually, I saw a really interesting stat. I don't remember which article I was reading yesterday. It might have been The Athletic or ESPN or something. But somebody said that had the Celtics had the same kind of fourth quarter on Sunday that they did on Thursday, they would have won the game on Sunday 104 to 103. But they benched all of their best players when they were down 23, despite being able to have that comeback, you know, another time. And Draymond Green questioned Ime Udoka's decision to bench them. I think they didn't have it. The shots weren't falling from really anybody. They just weren't playing well. I don't think they were going to mount a comeback. So at the very least, you might as well just rest guys who have been playing a ton of basketball. But like, you know, that's sort of where we are with the Celtics team. It's like, are you going to get the team that outscores the Golden State Warriors 42 or 40 to 16? Or are you going to get the team that's outscored 35 to 14?
I know we're analyzing every little last bit here, but does it matter at all that they're coming home for this one?
You know, George, you think it would, because home court advantage is supposed to be an advantage, but the Celtics are actually better on the road in this postseason than they are at home. But I will say this, and this is why a lot of people who are on they were one bad quarter away from being up 2-0, they're super resilient. And the thing that has been so frustrating is that it's like this roller coaster ride with this team, but they have managed every single time they've had a complete stinker of a game, they have come back and had a tremendous game. So I think a lot of people, to me, game 3 is going to be really indicative of where this series goes, because the Celtics have not lost back-to-back games since prior to the postseason. I think it was March. Don't quote me on that, but I'm 99.9% sure March is the last time they lost. Early March, back-to-back games. So they've been really good at like whatever went wrong in the game prior, they have fixed it for the next one. So if they come out in game 3 and they blow the doors off the place and they beat the Warriors and they take a series lead and they're up 2-1, you know, then it's sort of like, okay, are we just sort of back into this like seesaw of when their backs are against the wall, they win when they have to. But if they lose, is that a bigger indicator of maybe the Warriors just have a little bit more of what it takes?
You know, one of the many things I love about the NBA is they're very much into advocacy. Remember, they all wore Black Lives Matter T-shirts after the George Floyd murder. Now they've got these, a lot of them got these End Gun Violence T-shirts. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it was really great. Before game 2, while both the Warriors and the Celtics were shooting around, they wore, in fact, I think it was Friday, was National Gun Violence Awareness Day, and you were encouraged to wear orange. Obviously, they didn't play on Friday, so they did this on Sunday instead. Both teams during warmups wore bright, orange T-shirts that said "End Gun Violence" on the front, but on the back, it actually gave phone numbers and websites for places that you could go to, like Everytown for Gun Safety, Giffords Courage, places like that, Sandy Hook Promise. That they've been supporting. And I thought it was really great before the game. Steve Kerr, who's been very outspoken about a number of social issues, but in particular gun violence and guns and guns and the push for gun safety. And he said what I was hoping he would kind of come around and say, which was we have to, if the majority of people want sensible gun safety laws, right?
Yep.
We have to vote out the people who won't do that. And he kind of went through and was like, there are these congressional races, there are these Senate races. And if you live somewhere where you feel like it's not safe for your kid to go to school, take a look and see who's on the ballot and who is going to pass sensible gun measures in order to keep, not just kids, but every single one of us safe, whether we're going to a concert or a grocery store, a school, because obviously it's sadly everywhere. But I love the NBA. Like, that's something they encourage. And I think, maybe I'm jumping the gun on this here a little bit, probably a terrible pun to come off of the last story, but the Celtics to practice on Saturday wore We Are All BG shirts, which is We Are All Brittany Griner.
Oh, yes, yes. And she's still in prison in Russia.
Yes.
And who knows how long, and she's a big star in the WNBA, and who knows how long she's gonna be there.
And it took a while for the NBA to kind of come around and, I don't want to say embrace the cause, but be more public in their support and their push to bring her back to the United States. But Adam Silver has been sort of making the rounds on ESPN. He was on with Amina Smith and Brian Scalabrine the other day on our pregame show. And he talked about, the importance of advocating for her and trying to give all the resources that they can. But he did say, some of it had to be done quietly early on in the negotiations, because you are playing with obviously an authoritarian government who might use her as a political pawn, and they had to just really tread lightly just to keep her safety in mind. But it's certainly something that the NBA is getting more intimately involved with as it wears on.
Well, Trenni Kusnierek, as we move over to advocacy in baseball, before we talk about a pothole in advocacy and something that's happened around Pride Month, let's talk about Gabby Giffords, the former congresswoman who's going to be throwing out the first pitch at Fenway next week. Just to remind people, she suffered a terrible head injury when she was shot and has since been just a tremendous advocate. I've had the pleasure of spending some time with her with the Boston Speaker Series, and she is an amazing individual, and her passion and her conviction and her strength run deep. But what will we see there next week?
Yeah, so June 16th, the Red Sox, who were not at home, they were on the road for National End Gun Violence Day. So they are going to sort of hold their own event, for lack of a better word, on June 16th. Gabby Gifford is going to come. Gabby Giffords is going to throw out the first pitch. I'm sure that she will speak to media. I'm sure that she will give and talk, and just give these guys some tools from her own experience. The people in power with the Red Sox, I'd have to imagine she's probably also going to meet with state and local politicians and just impart on them what she's learned as she's dedicated her life to ending gun violence and enhancing gun safety measures. But the other cool thing that the Red Sox are going to do is every Red Sox game, they have a 50-50 raffle, and the proceeds of that raffle on June 16th are going to go to Everytown Gun Safety. So it's kind of an entire encompassing messaging campaign on June 16th to end gun violence. And I don't know if you guys have driven past Fenway recently, but I actually think it's, so they have the Run to Home Base, which is a really wonderful running race to benefit veterans and veterans services. And while the billboard is focused on Run to Home Base, it has a gun tie, and it talks about the number of suicides by gun for service people, which I just think is smart, targeted marketing to remind people that when we're talking about gun safety, it's not just about mass shootings, right? That suicide is the leading cause of firearms death in the United States. And so many of them are the men and women who, volunteer their lives to protect us. And we make it very easy to not protect them.
So the pothole I was talking about was what happened with the Tampa Bay Rays. So you have a team where, entering into Pride Month, they had uniforms at their disposal that had rainbow accents, either on their uniforms or their caps. And it was supposed to be a show of support, but what happened is there are a number of players who, citing their religious beliefs, refused to wear that. And in my estimation, it completely backfired because it only went to accent the lack of support and the disapproval they have for the LGBTQ plus lifestyle.
Yeah, listen, I'm not sure if it accents the Rays, but it certainly accents those players. And it was really interesting because the article, it was Tyler Kepner from the New York Times, who's a longtime baseball writer, really, really great guy, who wrote this article. And it's because when I first read it, Jared, I thought, okay, these guys are allowed, we do live in a free country, freedom of religion, freedom of expression. But the way Tyler so eloquently wrote his piece, and what I wasn't even nuanced enough to think about, was that they're hiding behind this shield of it's a choice, right? It's a lifestyle, which is also diminishing to the LGBTQ community, right? And so them refusing to wear something. And also he brought up the point that you just have to wear the uniform. Like, it's not like somebody can say, well, I don't support war, so I'm not going to wear the Memorial Day uniform today. I don't support something else, but like for whatever reason, we make concessions for this. And it's like, no, you're part of a team, and what the Rays could have done and maybe should have done is say, fine, you don't want to wear the team uniform, then you don't get to play today. But I did love that and this is so great for Tyler, because it's hard to write a piece like this and go back into these clubhouses and have to talk to these players and take a pretty opinionated stance on it. And I love that he basically said, #karma, because the pitchers who refused to wear the uniform gave up the losing runs on that game.
Oh, good.
And so it's just, but it made me, I'm glad Tyler wrote it, because it made me think of the issue in a different way and make it not about choice so much as your message taking over the message of unity, which is part of being on a team, right? And no one else has that choice, so why do they have the choice to not wear?
That's what I couldn't quite understand, is why this wasn't worked out with the team beforehand. If you don't have a uniform decision, then why move forward with this? Again, for the reasons I said, again, this is my personal interpretation, but it highlights those who have a problem and exacerbates the perception throughout the community.
We're talking to Trenni Kusnierek. She's an anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston. So, Rafael Nadal has won 14 French Open titles now, and as this piece on CNN says, the sporting world is running out of superlatives to describe him. What does he say? He says, quote, "I always consider myself a very normal guy, so if I did it, maybe somebody else can too." I mean, that's going to be the most modest remark I've heard from a world champion superstar athlete in ages. What's the deal?
Isn't it so the anti-Djokovic?
Yes.
Right? Like,
yes. Well, remember,
that's what I thought.
Yeah, no, Djokovic wouldn't get vaccinated.
Like, of course I am the best.
Yeah, and he wouldn't tell people about his vaccination status and wouldn't play because he wouldn't get the vaccine and blah, blah, blah. So tell us about Rafael.
Rafael Nadal is, listen, I always say when you cover athletes, you don't really know what they're like, right? Like your interaction with them is, especially at that level, it is so swift. And usually in a contained interview type, it's not like you're hanging out with them, having, beers after a match. But my interactions with him, and from what I understand and the little bit of tennis that I've covered, is that he has just a sterling reputation for being like a really good guy, a hard worker, but just like taking out of who he is as a person, like what he's accomplished as a player. And so I feel like it sounds crazy to say it, but almost quietly, like, did you guys know that he has the most Grand Slams of any male men's player?
I didn't.
He has now surpassed Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic. So he is the king of clay. We know that, right? Like he has now won 14 French Opens. He won his first one at 19 years old. I mean, like his
and now he's
uncle
36,
and
right?
now he's 36 years old. He just turned 36 years old. So here's someone who has had nearly 2 full decades of like unprecedented success. He also won in Australia. Now we're moving to the grass court season, which is a little bit harder, I think, for him just because of his like knee issues and stuff. But you were talking about a player who may be, Djokovic is probably the closest to being able to continue to challenge him because he's a couple years younger and he hasn't had quite the injury issues. Federer really is probably, he's in his 40s now, a ton of injuries. I think where he stands is probably where he stands in terms of majors. Maybe he wins one more, but we're going to see, like this sort of, I think, back and forth and really great competition between Nadal and Djokovic for a while. Even before, like you think of some of the great players now that are starting, the younger guys, like they can't sort of crack that ceiling of being the best of the best because these 2 30-something-year-old guys continue to beat them. Like Casper Ruud, beats Marin Cilic in this, like 4 sets, like completely dominates them after Cilic wins the first set. And Ruud has like no chance against Rafael Nadal. Like it's insane. And he's just, I don't know, there's something about him. And I always tell people, watch when he plays because he is like so meticulous about everything. And you will never unsee this now that I've told you about this. I've probably said it on the show before. When he sits down, he turns his water bottles to a certain way.
Oh, he does?
And he does all of these. He bounces the ball a certain number of times. You'll see him like tuck his hair behind his ears, wipe his brow. He has like this whole thing, this sequence he goes through. like when he sits down, but also before he serves, because he's just like, but that's who he is. Like everything is about preparation and repetition. And obviously success, he's to me is like the easiest guy to cheer for. I just was so happy to see him win.
Well, this is something that comes with age, doesn't it? I mean, you have a better understanding of yourself, of the game, of the machine, and then your own confidence.
How hard it is.
Yeah, to be able to turn around and say, and look kindly upon the next generation, say anybody can do this.
I would say yes and no, though, Joe. When you have that much success and it comes, like they always say, people who are so good at something are never great teachers at it, are often good coaches, right? So like Tom Brady might never be a great coach because he's such an incredible player. Like how do you teach innate natural talent? So to me, it's really impressive for Nadal to be so good at what he does for so long, but yet still recognize how hard it is to be that great for that amount of time.
So Trenni Kusnierek, before you go, tell us about the Bruins coach that just got fired. Should they have fired him? How far did they get? They were in the playoffs, but they didn't get that far. Was that the deal?
No, they lost in the first round in 7 games to Carolina.
Yeah.
So we are hearing, listen, I don't claim to be like a hockey insider or hockey aficionado, but from what I have heard from like our hockey people is that the players didn't love playing for him, which is fine. Like that happens sometimes. But to me and to people in hockey by and large, the bigger issue isn't Bruce Cassidy. And like, not that you want to rely on social media, but like if you read any of the comments on the stories, people are like apoplectic that Don Sweeney and Cam Neely never face any scrutiny and their jobs are never in jeopardy. Like these are 2 guys who are the architects of the team. So they decide who gets drafted, who gets traded, who gets signed. This is an aging team with no real young stars coming up to replace the Brad Marchands, the Patrice Bergerons, the David Krejci who is gone, and like now they think that it's honestly, as in terms of roster construction, the Bruins are kind of a mess, and that's not Bruce Cassidy's fault.
Well, now I'm understanding why they went out of their way to say that the players didn't drive this. So did they drive this, but they're just telling us otherwise?
I think that's usually probably how it goes, right? Like, no, this has nothing to do with the players. They loved Bruce Cassidy. Like, but honestly, Jared, like, in fairness, that's not a team that like I'm around all the time. So I don't know, but I do trust, like there were enough things being said yesterday that it sounds like players, Bruce Cassidy is hard on his players. He calls them out publicly. But also like that's Ime Udoka does that. Udoka calls his players out publicly, and that has rallied them around him, not the opposite. So at some point you need to look in the mirror and say, who's the coach here?
So we got to go, but are you going to change your call? Celtics, Warriors, you're still going to be Warriors in 6?
Well, check with me next week after games 3 and 4, but that's what I'm sticking with for now.
Okay, Trenni, love the
I reserve
puppy.
the right to change my mind.
We have a picture of the puppy. She's adorable. Congratulations.
So cute.
We have been speaking with Trenni Kusnierek, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston. Thank you, Trenni. Coming up next is medical ethicist Art Kaplan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
The voice of the team. The doors are opening for smart conversation with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio. Local perspective, local voices. Welcome aboard Boston's local NPR.
Support for GBH comes from you and Mass Cultural Council, committed to supporting a diverse, inclusive, and an anti-racist cultural sector in the Commonwealth. You can check out their grants and services at massculturalcouncil.org. Every story has its twists and turns, so let the PBS NewsHour set the record straight. Get the facts you need from America's most trusted news source. Don't miss the PBS NewsHour, weeknights at 6 on GBH2.
I'm Morning Edition producer Karen Marshall, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH. WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. Boston's local NPR.
Ahead on Boston Public Radio, we're live at the Boston Public Library. Our medical ethicist Art Kaplan will join us about guns in America, a great new drug, we think, for breast cancer, and the quote-unquote pink tape at the FDA preventing women from accessing over-the-counter birth control pills. Then it's Lee Pelton of the Boston Foundation, here to talk about his work to address the racial wealth gap here in Boston.
I'm Jared Bowen in for Jim Browdy. After Lee Pelton, it's Carol Rose, Executive Director for the Massachusetts ACLU. She'll discuss the future of abortion access in the Commonwealth, where the state just got a nod from the Beyond Roe Coalition for its investments in women's health care. And CNN's John King returns to discuss the latest out of Washington ahead of Thursday's prime-time January 6th hearings. All that and more ahead on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. 7 more states are holding their primary elections today. One closely watched contest is underway in Iowa, where Democrats will elect a candidate to try to unseat longtime incumbent Republican Senator Chuck Grassley in November. Iowa Public Radio's Clay Masters has more.
One thing that certainly unites Democrats in this primary is a disapproval of Chuck Grassley, but it's a whole other game when you get to the general election. And of course, the president's party always loses ground in a midterm election. Grassley is favored to win this race. This used to be more of a swing state, but Democrats have lost a lot of ground here over the last decade.
Clay Masters reporting. The leader of the far-right group known as the Proud Boys and 4 lieutenants are due in court this week to face charges of seditious conspiracy. NPR's Carrie Johnson reports on the Justice Department's investigation into the January 6th attack at the U.S. Capitol last year.
A lawyer for Enrique Tarrio says he looks forward to having his day in court. A federal grand jury indicted Tarrio and 4 other members of the far-right Proud Boys on the rare charge of seditious conspiracy, arguing they tried to overthrow the government by using force during the riot at the U.S. Capitol. A leader of the Proud Boys in North Carolina already pleaded guilty in April and agreed to help prosecutors. The charge comes days before the first public hearings by a congressional panel investigating the Capitol attack. Investigators are expected to feature activities by the Proud Boys and another group, the Oath Keepers. 11 Oath Keepers, including founder Stuart Rhodes, have also been charged with seditious conspiracy. Carrie Johnson, NPR News, Washington.
President Biden will meet with leaders from across the Western Hemisphere this week at the Summit of the Americas. But as NPR's Franco Ordonez tells us, the event has been overshadowed by who will not be attending.
Mexico's President Andrés Manuel López Obrador says he's skipping the summit held this year in Los Angeles because Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua will not be there. Assistant Secretary of State Brian Nichols said they thought about it, but ruled out inviting the authoritarian leaders.
We felt that the most appropriate decision was to maintain our own commitment to democracy and human rights in our hemisphere.
He says those who attend will still be able to get business done. Leaders are expected to make announcements about economic recovery from the pandemic, millions of dollars to fight hunger, as well as issue a declaration on migration, a top regional issue. Franco Ordonez, NPR News.
President Biden is expected to speak tomorrow at the Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 12 points at 32,902. The S&P is down slightly. NASDAQ is up 12 points. You're listening to NPR News.
And from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Judy Ewell with the local stories we're following. Raytheon is moving its corporate headquarters from Waltham to Arlington, Virginia. The company says the location just outside Washington brings it closer to clients in the U.S. government and commercial aerospace industry while reinforcing partnerships so it can advance innovative technologies. The statement also cited Arlington's convenience as a travel hub. Now, the company says the defense contractor will maintain its presence in Massachusetts. Jury selection begins today in a Boston courtroom in the final trial of a parent accused in the so-called Varsity Blues case. Amin Khoury is accused of bribing a Georgetown University tennis coach to help get his daughter into that school. Khoury is not accused of working with the mastermind of the scheme that landed actresses, prominent businessmen, and other wealthy parents behind bars. Prosecutors alleged he used a middleman to get the Georgetown coach to recruit his daughter to the tennis team, even though she was not a high-caliber player. In sports, Bruins fans are weighing in about what they'd like to see in a new coach one day after Bruce Cassidy was let go.
Bring in Gretzky. Let's see what he can do. He didn't do so well with the Coyotes, but we need to bring him up north, bring him up to Boston, and, show him some real hockey fans,
We need a little bit more energy. We need a little more something to get us there, yeah. But I think hopefully a new coach will energize the team and energize the city.
Bruins GM Don Sweeney says he does have a list of candidates to replace Cassidy, but Sweeney says the search will take some time. Elsewhere in sports, the Sox play the Angels tonight. Sunshine ahead of showers today, highs in the 70s. Clouds and showers tonight, lows in the 60s. Rain, heavy at times tomorrow, highs in the 70s, and rain Wednesday night. Right now it's 78 in Boston.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include DuckDuckGo, a privacy company committed to making privacy online simple. Used by tens of millions, they offer private search and tracker blocking with one download. DuckDuckGo, privacy simplified.
And for more original reporting, visit gbhnews.org. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live as we do every Tuesday and Friday from the Boston Public Library, where the news... Oh, my goodness. Nice round of applause for us, Jared. We love that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We're also streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. Jared Bowen, Executive Arts Editor here at GBH, is filling in for Jim Brady. Isn't that nice?
Yeah, that was very lovely.
Yeah, I like that. Little applause from the crowd.
Nice, beautiful, sunny day down here, too.
It's gorgeous down here. Absolutely. This is a gorgeous place to be. So far in 2022, there have been more mass shootings than days in the year, more than 200 shootings that have caused 4 or more casualties. And those figures fail to capture other gun violence that ripples through communities every day, including crises and tragedies we've had right here in Boston from gun violence. So joining us now to discuss this is medical ethicist Art Kaplan. He's the Doctors William F. and Virginia Conley Mitty Professor and founding head of the Division of Medical Ethics at NYU School of Medicine in New York City. Hello, Art Kaplan.
Hey, by the way, where's the librarian to shush up that noise?
I know. It's outrageous the way people behave down here.
There you
have to
go.
keep going out into the crowd and telling people to calm down. Art. But anyway, every time I'm looking at John King, he's going to joining us later on today talking about the gun talks down in Congress, and it's kind of like a broken record to me. We heard after Columbine things are going to change. We heard after certainly Sandy Hook things are going to change. Parkland things are going to change. Now people are saying, this is finally it. They are talking about making some modest changes in Congress. Do you think it's going to happen this time?
Well, look, I think there's 2 angles to take here. One is, what can doctors do and nurses in talking with patients? And that's got nothing to do with Congress or negotiations in state capitals. I think there's some steps that should be taken. The gun problem for kids, I think they're now number 1 cause of death is gun violence for children. It's kind of hard to believe, but I think it's true. And a lot of docs don't have a lot of time with their patients, but if you're in a group that has kids, then let's start some conversations quickly. Do you have guns in the house? Are they stored safely? Have you told your child what to do? If they find a gun, do you ask the neighbors if they have guns? In other words, there's a quick checklist I think that medicine can do without any legislation to kind of help get gun safety going a bit more. Remember, too, another big cause of death isn't the mass shootings, it's suicides. Gun suicides are really, if you will, more of a horrible problem than even the mass shootings. And we've got to make sure that mental health, do you have a gun in the house? If you're depressed or PTSD, these are questions that medicine, I think, should give more emphasis to. And again, I appreciate the plate's full. You're trying to figure out, how do I respond to this patient in front of me and their complaint? I don't have time to go through wear your seatbelt, and are you making sure that you don't have sex with people who have monkeypox? There's 100 things you can do. But I think guns with kids is getting up there. So that's an area I hope we see aggressively pursued. Do I think we're going to get much out of Washington? No. There's still not the momentum on the Senate side to do it. I just don't see it. At most, maybe they'll come up with some mild thing about, gun sales up to 21 or something like that. But they're starting to talk a lot about doors and making sure there's one entry in a place. And it's ridiculous. Fire safety won't allow half of those ideas. And the other thing they want to do is arm teachers. So far, the current policy seems to be, we'll tell you what to teach and then we'll give you a gun to teach it. It's like, I don't know, that's not where we ought to be. We have to be in a place where we restrict, automatic weapons. We have to be in a place, I think, where we do background checks, which would be the easiest thing to do. And I'm sorry to be ranting here, but one comment is this. There are many nations, believe it or not, Canada, Switzerland, Israel, that have as many guns as we do, but they train people, and you don't just go buy one without a check or an assessment or education about how to store it. Only in America can you wander in someplace and buy a wartime weapon. That's where we need the legislation. I don't think Congress is going to produce it. And by the way, the list of kid slaughters, it runs over, I think, 40 since Columbine, and nothing happened.
It's certainly a grim prognosis. We wanted to ask you about a story we read about in the Washington Post, too, about what a community deals with after they've had one of these horrific mass shootings within their confines. And there's a whole circuit, it appears, that shows up after one of these. Of course, media is on the scene, and it can be argued whether that helps or hurts the community with their questions and wanting to tell stories. But all the other people who come into a town that is suffering deeply, what do you know about that, and does it help?
I'm really doubtful that having sort of roving preachers, people touting self-help therapy that say, I'll talk to you, who are they? They show up. There are all kinds of people who come to explain away the evil, so to speak. Sadly, there are groups that show up prior mass murders trying to reach out. I think that probably is good, peer-to-peer support. But these things are turning into a uniquely American circus of, Jared, just exploiters, charlatans, circus-like atmosphere, people with no training, just setting up tables and saying, I'm here to deliver therapy, or I'll tell you why Jesus let this happen, or whatever message they choose to deliver. And it's just, I think, adding insult to injury, most of it. I don't mind the peer-to-peer reach out. That's, I think, they probably know where the good support is and can help other people. But what kind of country is it where we now have a whole retinue of people showing up regularly after school shootings?
Yeah. It's like a traveling retinue, as Jared
it
said.
literally traveled from Buffalo to Texas.
Yeah, the relief workers, the therapists, the proselytizers, and the voyeurs, and then of course the press people coming down, the voyeur types, I guess, going down to just see what this place looks like. Art, you also hear all the time when we get in these arguments about what to do about gun violence. People say, oh, well, this is usually people who are against tightening gun laws say, oh, look at, 9 people were shot dead over the weekend in Chicago, and 50 more, were shot or were injured, and they talk about inner city violence and all that, and how, they all have these tighter gun laws in these places. And it's a ridiculous argument for a lot of reasons, because people can go right across the state line to get states like we can to New Hampshire to go up there to a gun show and buy what you want up there at the gun show. People from Boston, you hear lots of times that the Boston guns are acquired outside of Boston. But the argument is that nothing happens, that we don't pay enough attention to these things. I think in Boston we do cover these stories in the Boston Globe, and we used to cover them a lot in the Boston Herald when the Herald had more people. But it's a legitimate point that Chicago, New York City, Boston, shootings happen a lot, and they don't get the coverage.
Well, that's true. Look, there are 400 million guns in the U.S. So I don't know, whatever laws you want to pass about carrying a gun or a concealed weapon or whatever, I imagine If you were mined, you could probably come up with a gun in any American city within about an hour. I mean, you could probably find someone to sell it to you, move it to you. There's so many guns, it's ridiculous. I know everybody's starting to do, there's been a change. We're starting to lump everything into mass shootings, right? Whether it's a gang outbreak or kids fighting with rivals. There was a shootout recently on South Street in Philadelphia, or whether it's a drive-by shooting or whatever. And those didn't get attention. That's true. But I'm not sure the response to mass violence in a school or somebody showing up to shoot up a supermarket is the same in terms of solutions and responses as what you're going to have to do with gang warfare or innocent people just getting shot because someone is shooting a gun off an overpass or something like that. So I don't mind lumping them if it draws attention to the gun problem, but we better not do what we do with vaccines and say that hesitancy and resistance to vaccines in different communities is all the same. It wasn't. What makes an African American who's poor hesitant about a vaccine is not the same as what makes somebody up in Cape Ann decide they're going to use natural healing instead of vaccines because they don't want to use, pharmaceuticals or something. So that's what bothers me about this mass shooting categorization. Everything's getting lumped. It certainly draws attention to gun violence, but the responses, it just seems to me, are not going to be the same to solve the problem.
Certainly a connection here is mental health, and I think Trenni Kusnierek was just making the point that we know that suicide rates are up in part because people have such easy and quick access to guns. Well, at the same time, we're seeing a resistance, it seems, in public schools across the country to incorporate more mental health programs within the school district, within the school community. Why the resistance?
Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, if you want to respond to, say, shooters who go shoot up a school or a supermarket, I think those are on their face mental health issues, which is not to be equated with anybody with a mental health diagnosis is violent. It is not true. But clearly, if you are going to take an automatic weapon and blow to bits 20 children in a school, I think you've got something wrong. I do. I mean, I don't know what it is, not a psychiatrist, but something's off. So we need better surveillance. We need better screening. We need more mental health monitoring, and then we need more treatment availability, which we don't have. Jared, if I said to you, my kid seems to have violent tendencies and reported that to somebody, I would probably be told, well, within a year, they'll get an appointment. Really? I mean, that's the best we're going to do? A year? So we do need more mental health intervention. We don't have the resources right now to do it. And there's a lot of stigma to mental health, to answer your question. People think it's a flaw in their family, how they raise the kid, or something's wrong in a way that they wouldn't be embarrassed if we said your child has, COVID, or your child caught herpes or something. These are not the same as mental health. Some cultures in America don't even recognize mental health. They just deny that could even be possible. The other thing is, again, I'm ranting here, but you hit a sore spot. A lot of people think if mental health is available in the school, then they're going to supplement or replace what parents do. I don't think that's true at all. I think mental health can work with parents, but there's no need to presume that if there's some mental health worker or psychologist at the school, then that's going to threaten your ability to parent the way you see fit. But there is a lot of fear that, the mental health people are coming and they're going to kick the parents out and start talking immediately about, I don't know, transgender issues. Or
exactly. This was in Connecticut. This New York Times piece was in Connecticut, your state. They said this is your fault, Art Kaplan, your state here. They did say it was a rural part of Connecticut, but that's exactly what went on. This 17-year-old, this is a New York Times story, by the way, when they were talking about getting a mental health clinic in school, because what have we been talking about so much during the pandemic is that the mental health of young people has been severely impacted, more depression, more anxiety. So the 17-year-old gets up up and talks about her own battles with depression and anxiety, talks about how they need to have mental health clinic in the school. And I cannot believe, any parent who thinks that their kids are always going to come to them first with their issues, especially when they're teenagers. A parent like that is in denial, or they have never raised a teenager. Everybody who has knows, and everybody who was a teenager knows.
Exactly, yeah.
It's often your parents who are the last to know, and you would like an adult, like a person in school, to be able to talk to if you have issues, maybe with your parents, right? And that's what they're talking about. Oh no, we can't have this mental health clinic in the school because they might be talking people into getting birth control or talking to them about gender identity. So if you have this right-wing parents, who are very anti-gay, and you're gay, maybe you'd like an adult in school to help you out.
Well, as someone who basically did nothing but grunt at my parents from age about
Exactly.
13 to 17.
Exactly.
I don't think I ever had a sustained conversation during those years
Yeah.
with them. I think having a counselor or somebody to talk to would be great. And just 2 quick points. One, mental health people don't promote anything. They respond to what people present as complaints. They're not there with a liberal agenda or somehow some salesmanship that they want to foster, some values outlook. That isn't how it works. We have to get rid of that ridiculous idea. If your kid's gay and they want to talk about it, great, but they're not there to say, hey, have you considered being gay? That's something to think about. That isn't
Exactly.
mental health.
And you're going to do a 180 right there in the office. Yeah.
And then the other thing, as you point out, or both of you pointed out, I think if we have mental health counselors, can't we all agree that being locked up for 3 years probably created some mental health issues for everybody?
Well, the irony here that really gets me going is we talked a couple of weeks ago about how there's a lot of pushback from conservative groups about these so-called social and emotional learning programs in schools that help kids deal with their emotions, whether they're getting bullied or whether they are a bully or whether they're struggling with whatever they're struggling with. So they don't want to have those. But every time, and this is a mental health thing, right? But every time we hear about a shooting, what do you hear from the anti-gun law people? Well, we have to have mental health help. So here you have a group trying to put in a mental health contingent and help these kids, and they don't want that because they're worried about birth control.
Governor Abbott of Texas,
Exactly.
who said we need mental health.
Exactly.
And I'll slash $200 million out of the budget. It was going to mental health.
Exactly. I was so pleased to read today that some very rich people wrote a letter to the Dallas Morning News rebutting Abbott and saying we do need some common sense gun laws, and they're big donors, and let's hope that they're not going to give their money to Abbott because he's being so ridiculous. But it just shows this is a bunch of baloney, really. They don't really want mental health.
Look, I'm going to call out the automatic weapons thing very simply. Why do you need them? Many Americans think they need them to fight a war against the yet-to-be-named enemy, whether it's the Russians or left-wing crazies or the oncoming race war. That's what gun rights are about in America. It really isn't about hunting. If you hunt with an AR-51, you're going to blow the thing to bits. There's nothing to pick up.
No.
It's not about hunting. It's about this fear. The police can't protect me, so I'm going to arm myself up for that reason. Or there's some invasion, outside threat, something, and I need to be ready to take it on. If we don't start talking straight talk about why people are getting automatic weapons, I don't think we're going to get to the heart of the resistance.
We're talking to our medical ethicist, Art Kaplan. Okay, Art Kaplan, I believe we have some good news in terms of this new drug that has had some great success with breast cancer.
So this is really good. I got to applaud.
We'll all applaud
this
that.
drug. This is out of the blue. There's always been a kind of cancer that has a weird chemical called HER receptors, and we've used chemotherapy against most cancers. A few people with high levels of that weird stuff have been able sometimes to use some other options. This new drug uses kind of the body's immune system, an antibody, to go look for trace amounts of this receptor, which causes cancer cells to grow fast and it delivers chemotherapy right on the cell. So you're not
Yes.
taking it, orally and having your hair fall out and all kinds of other side effects. So this came out of the blue. Normally I know about these things. I hadn't heard about this. It's an AstraZeneca drug. It got people to live 6 months longer with end-stage cancer without having to go through chemo. That was the announcement. That's pretty good. Would that help people who are earlier with breast cancer? Yes. Could it help other people with this similar cancers that also produce this grow fast message to cells, which is part of what cancer is? Yes. So big breakthrough. Really, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal.
Now, is there an ethical issue here in terms of how, when these new drugs come out, how does it work? Is it you have to wait till your physician gets it, or is it a small group that starts and there's bigger trials? How does it work?
So they're announcing results of a trial at the big cancer meetings. That's why we're hearing about it right now. The company will probably need to ramp up production of the product, so it will be in short supply, I'll say, for the next year. Then we're going to get into the usual problem of America, price.
Right.
So I think it'll be around, and I think people are going to want it and going to want to use it, and doctors are going to prescribe it. But what's it going to cost? I have no doubt that there'll be huge pressure to reimburse it, and that's fine. It'll also take other trials to see if it works earlier onset breast cancer. So we're going to have to wait for that to come in. But the next year, I think we'll see some sad stories of people saying, I don't have a year. I'd like to get this now, but it's in short supply. Who do we give it to? That'll be the rationing ethics problem.
This is the opposite of what we usually find, right? That these things are sort of teased out so that we have a high expectation. I'm struck that you weren't aware either, that this caught everybody kind of by surprise.
No, I mean, my oncology friends, if they knew about it, they were hiding it under their pillow. I really, they had no signal that this thing was, it may have even shocked, to be honest, the drug maker, that low levels of this Herceptin stuff was able to be detected by this drug, if you will, and deliver a knockout blow. They may have been just as surprised as everybody else.
So Art Kaplan, a medical ethicist, every time I talk to you or Corby Kummer, our food man, I'm hearing some other awful shenanigans story from the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. Now we have another one, the so-called pink tape caper at the FDA involving birth control over-the-counter sales. What's going on?
Birth control has been around, I think, 60 years.
Yeah, a long time.
It seems to be very safe. It seems to work very well. I'm not going to say everybody tolerates it, all women, but, it's really got an outstanding efficacy record and a very, very, very great safety record. The question is, why do you need a prescription? FDA's been sitting on this data for 60 years, and they're getting a request, make it available over the counter. No prescription, just buy it because it's sort of safe to use. There are two tough questions here, Marjorie. You may be able to answer this. One, can women read labels to see what they need to know?
No, we
and
need,
two, can
we
they
need
follow
to ask
instruction?
our brothers, husbands, or boyfriends, I guess, to read it for us.
That's right.
Clearly.
You can always find your partner to interpret
That's
the
right.
label for you, and then follow the instruction. I mean, to me, it's political. There's no other possible reason. If this drug is kind of in the aspirin category, very safe, could be something dangerous for a few people if it makes your stomach bleed, but there's no excuse, none. It's pure politics, conservatives reaching out. And let me say, just so we don't end on too happy a note with the cancer breakthrough, which we hate, we don't want good news to end. This is what's going to happen post-Roe. There are people coming for your contraception. It's not just about abortion.
But it did seem to me if you could buy birth control pills over the counter, that could erase a barrier for lots of women that are worried about birth control failing and not being able to get an abortion. I mean, birth control pills, if you take them, they're 99% effective as long as you remember to take them every day. They're pretty good, right?
I've seen estimates as high as 15% of unwanted pregnancies would be ended by over-the-counter sales.
Yeah.
That's not trivial in abortion numbers. That's a lot
No,
of
it's
abortions.
it's not trivial at all.
Yeah, so the solution to me to abortion has always been sex education. Sorry, folks, but that ought to be in the schools too, and easily available contraception. You want to cut abortion rates, make for that. I mean, I don't care if you try to convince teenagers about chastity or whatever. Good luck, but fine, you can message that if you want to. But add in all the other sexual facts that they need to know, including about venereal diseases and so on, and then get condoms and birth control as fast as you can. By the way, another area where other countries do it, Holland, don't have anything like the abortion rates we do, and nobody pays attention to the evidence here. They just say if you have widespread birth control, they're going to go sexually crazy.
You know, one thing about the abortion thing, I always think of Planned Parenthood, which is being pummeled by people who are anti-abortion. Planned Parenthood does so much on women's health care that is not about abortion, and in terms of birth control, in terms of pap tests, all those kinds of things which are done at a lower rate. And it's a sad state of affairs, really, that they're going to be closing in so many places. So you wonder where these girls, well, I shouldn't say girls, I mean young women, or sometimes it is girls that are going to get birth control because they don't want to talk to their parents, as many teenage girls do not, about these things. Where are they going to go now to get those kinds of
And by the way, it includes things like getting their HPV shot to prevent cervical cancer and many, many other health interventions. You close them. It reminds me a little bit of the arguments we used to have about mental health. We have to close the institutions. Okay, they're bad. Close the institutions. And then nothing. Nothing was put in to replace them. So if you just close Planned Parenthood and you budget nothing for women's health care, you're going to have a disaster.
Well, Art, we got to go, but we did notice that vasectomy searches have skyrocketed after.
Like right after.
I did see that too. There are, by the way, some male contraceptives in the pipeline, not immediate, but they're coming down the road.
Yeah, okay. Well,
we should mention right after the SCOTUS news. That was
right after the SCOTUS thing. Yeah, suddenly Google was going wild with people looking for where they could get a vasectomy, how much it was going to cost, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Art Kaplan.
You know what the real question is? Is that initiated by men or their partners?
I don't know. That is an excellent and unanswered question. Maybe we can get to the bottom of that before next week, Art Kaplan. Great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
See you guys.
Okay.
Thank you. We've been speaking with Art Kaplan. He's a Drs. William F. Virginia Connolly Mitty Professor and founding head of the Division of Medical Ethics at NYU School of Medicine in New York City. Coming up, Lee Pelton, president of the Boston Foundation, joins us. He's on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
It's been 17 months since rioters stormed the Capitol and shocked the nation.
The violence we witnessed today was the direct result of the poisonous lies.
A danger to our Constitution and our democracy.
Join us for special coverage of the House Select Committee's January 6th insurrection hearings, an investigation into exactly what happened and who was responsible. Thursday, here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Little Leaf Farms, committed to transforming the way food is grown in New England. Fresh lettuce harvested daily in Massachusetts all year round. It's the local lettuce locals love. Learn more at littleleaffarms.com. And Tanglewood. This summer at Tanglewood, you can enjoy the Boston Symphony Orchestra, Boston Pops, guest artists, and more in the Berkshire Hills. Details and performance schedule at tanglewood.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, as we do every Tuesday and Friday. Jim Browdy has a day off. Jarrett Bowen is in And we are going to keep talking for a little while longer about guns because it is the story of the day. We may get something out of Congress. We're going to talk to John King later about that. But as we just discussed with Art Kaplan, they are now the leading cause of death for children in America. And in the wake of Uvalde, the Boston Foundation established a Center for Resources and is trying to establish a path forward, saying that no single action will remove the uniquely American propensity toward homicide, suicide, and gun violence, and no one else will solve the problem for us. Joining us to talk about what the Boston Foundation is doing is the Boston Foundation president, Lee Pelton. And full disclosure, Lee also serves on the GBH Board of Trustees. So tell us, we were just talking before we went on the air about how it's a very difficult time in so many fronts in the United States of America, but tell us what you are doing over there about guns at the Boston Foundation that might be hopeful.
Well, thank you. I should also say in full disclosure that your co-host today is a graduate of Emerson College, where I used to be president. So
that's right.
Very
that's
proudly
right.
so.
That's right. Thank you.
We're very proud.
Thank you
proud
for
of that.
letting him in.
Yeah,
We heard it was
right.
a borderline situation, Lee Pelton.
Right. We let him in and we let him out. Well, which is both are good things. Well, where we start is by telling the truth. And the truth is that this nation has a gun fetish, serious gun fetish, like any other nation and country in this world. In 2020, over 42,000 people died from a firearm. Actually, it's 45,000 died from a firearm. And so that amounts to 123 deaths a day. That means between when you started the show at noon and when you start the show noon tomorrow, 123 people will have died by a firearm. And this fetish that we have is killing America, literally killing America. And I think as we now know that the young people suffer terribly with this fetish that we have. Between the ages of up to 19, the leading cause of death for young people is firearms. It used to be traffic fatalities, vehicular fatalities, no longer. More young people die from firearms than those who die from cancer in this country. And we have more firearms than we have people. So for every 100 citizens in this country, 120 have firearms. 120. And no other country, industrial or whatever you want to call it, no other country comes even close. And you know that the country that's second behind us is Yemen. Yemen is second behind us. And that's 52 guns per 100 people. So this is a serious cultural issue here, and it's getting even worse because we know that from 2019 to 2020, gun ownership shot up tremendously.
Well, that's the distinction here, too. We hear so much about people acquiring guns, but a huge part of this issue is the general accessibility that people have to guns, where if they make a decision and want to make a rash decision, often there's a gun immediately available to them.
Yes. Guns have one critical aspect. They are fatal. They're fatal. And so part of the issue in this country is the ready access that we have to guns. With young people, again up to the ages of 19, 64% of those deaths by firearms are homicides. Another 30% are suicides.
Yeah.
And the remaining portion are accidental. And this is because we have access to guns, an enormous access to guns. and it's creating havoc in this country. It is, and we ought to call it what it is a epidemic. It is a health crisis that is of epidemic proportions.
Because that time where there could be an intervention, somebody's already found a gun and used it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And also, we've talked about, banning semi-automatic weapons, which we should. They should not be in the hands of civilians. They should not be. On December 12th of 2012, when that awful person went to Sandy Hook and killed 26 or 27 young people and some adults, he had a semi-automatic weapon that could hold 100 bullets in his clip. It took him less than 2 minutes, the time of a short commercial, it took him less than 2 minutes to wreak havoc in that school and to kill those young people and their teachers. And so we've got, access is the issue for me. It's the principal issue. And we have to figure out some way to control access or limit access greater than we have, especially to these semi-automatic assault weapons and so on, and these with big clips.
Well, I mentioned Lee Pelton, president of the Boston Foundation, that you guys have established this Center for Resources. What are you doing?
Well, mostly we want to do what we're doing now, which is, as I said, tell the truth. And we're probably going to be working with other community foundations around the nation to bring together our sources, to bring some visibility to this issue. One thing that we lack around this issue is that we don't have a really central, federally funded program around this issue, the way we used to have that around traffic deaths and fatalities. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that research and that bright light and that visibility on that issue actually over time reduced traffic vehicular fatalities, and those have been on the decrease actually. So, I listened to Biden, as we all did. He talked a lot about what Congress could do. I wish he would talk about what he could do. And I
what
think
could he do?
Well, I think I just mentioned one, which is have a federally funded research on this issue, not small time, but big time.
But haven't conservatives blocked a lot of the government's efforts to research this? Remember when Vivek Murtha said that he's going to be the head doctor, whatever you call him, the guy that runs the Surgeon General, and he talked about how this is a public health issue. Everyone went, oh my goodness, we can't look at this as a public health issue, and we can't possibly have the federal government researching things. I think that's been kind of outlawed. You have to have outside groups do it now, don't you?
I don't know about that history, but I think we can do it, and it's something that doesn't require a legislative mandate, which, as we know, this is not going to get through Congress. By the way, if we're looking to the federal government to solve this problem, forget it. It's never going to happen, at least in my lifetime.
So you have to get individual states to change their laws.
Has to be at the state level. We have to be, and we know that Massachusetts has done a pretty good job. If you look at the death rate, which is the number of gun fatalities within a population of 100,000, we do well. Hawaii is at the top, 3.4, followed by California, which is 3.5, and then Massachusetts, which is 3.7 fatalities, deaths. Within 100. If you overlay that on that, strict gun laws, not just the fatalities and that rate, you get a ranking that looks something like this, with California at the top, Hawaii second, New York third, even though its rate is about 5.9 or something like that, and then we're fourth. But then you look at a place like Wyoming, its rate is 28. Or you look at a place like Mississippi or Alabama, they're at 24 24%. So we've got a long way to go.
As you mentioned, your goal here is to talk about it, to talk about truth. How about the way in which we're talking about this? There's been a lot of conversation recently about the media and how it's covering the story. All the things I learned at Emerson College, where I first learned how to tell stories at Emerson College. Right. But we're being told there needs to be a shift in the way we talk about this because it feeds into a certain culture that's existing, especially around mass shootings.
Yeah, I've heard that, and that may be true, although I've not seen any hard evidence that would suggest that that's true.
And I should explain a little bit more that by the way we're covering, by mentioning, I noticed you didn't use the shooter's name in talking about Sandy Hook, but by mentioning names, by showing images, sort of exalts the person to other like-minded individuals.
I think so. There is some research that suggests that there are copycat kinds of occurrences that happen. And it may be because they have some fetish over, or hero fetish over the person who committed these, and they want to do them the same. One thing that we all can do at state levels, you remember disinvest in countries that were doing business with South Africa?
Yes, I do, yeah.
Disinvest
in gun companies.
In these gun manufacturers.
Yeah.
Now the issue is that...
And pensions could be taken.
Could be. The issue is that many of these are private entities. So there's no investment to be made. But I think the disinvestment should not only include these companies, but should include all of the companies that are part of the supply chain that make these guns possible. That we can do, and I would. That's something we're going to be looking at TBF, actually.
We're talking to Lee Pelton, who's president of the Boston Foundation. Something we talked a lot about here is this huge wealth gap in Boston. I know they're re-examining the one that had $8 for African Americans and $247,000, I think it was, for white Americans. There's a reanalysis of that. But in any case, we have a huge equity gap in Boston. What's going on with that?
Well, there are a group of us, as you just said. It's the Boston Foundation, the Barr Foundation, the Eastern Bank. I'm forgetting some of the others. Oh, the Chamber of Commerce. And we're funding a refresh of that 2015 report. The methodology may not have been as good as it should have been. What it was short on is speaking to and making visible the underlying causes. And it was short on providing an analysis of where we go from here. And so our hope is that the new study, which is probably 3 years away from being completed, will look at those elements as well. I think the racial wealth gap is closing that is not a zero-sum game. It doesn't mean if I get something, you don't get it. Because we know that if we were to close this gap, we would all benefit. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that our nation has lost about $16 trillion over the last 20 years because of the racial wealth gap.
How does it grow collectively if the gap doesn't exist or is certainly narrowed?
How does it grow? Explain
They're
that.
talking about much more revenue could be generated. We would all be a more robust society financially if this gap didn't exist.
Well, it means that more people would have wealth that could bring in, one example, taxes to the government or taxes to the Commonwealth and so on. That if you have more wealth, you're going to spend more. So it creates economy, stimulates the economy in a very positive way. So all of those are ways in which, those are the ways in which we would gain. And in Massachusetts, the notion is that if we were to close completely the racial wealth gap, that it would add about $25 billion to our GDP over the next 5 years.
You know, Lee Pelton, you've been around a long time. We've been around a long time. Jared hasn't been around so long. But
well, a fair amount.
One of the things that would seem to me that would make a huge difference in Boston is the schools. And I know the Boston Foundation has done a lot of work with the schools over time. Michelle Wu's the new mayor, just a piece in the Globe saying that she's going to have to be the education mayor now because the state's breathing down her neck and saying that we're risking receivership here, which people seem to think is not a very good idea. But she's going to hire a new superintendent, and they're going to go through the same thing again, where you have to have everybody that's finalist going to be named. So maybe the best people might not come because they don't want people to know that their old job, that they're looking for a new job elsewhere. And some people think that even a new superintendent is not going to fix what the state is called and the Globe is called. Other people call this entrenched dysfunction of the Boston schools. So where do you think we should be going in terms of the schools? I mean, I know there's no magic wand, but you ran Emerson College. You know a lot about the Boston schools. It is kind of surprising to me that we can't seem to make much progress.
Yeah. Well, let me say this. There's no single entity, in my view, or single person that can solve this issue. And what we need is, I guess, as they describe it, a kind of Swiss cheese effect.
Yeah.
So a lot of different efforts that have holes in them, but you keep piling until those holes get full. And so I think, from my point of view, that if we think that the new superintendent is going to come in here, with a cape on and solve this issue, that ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. There are a lot of other things that need to be into play. And we have to understand that this issue is not simply an issue for the mayor or the governor or the commissioner, but it's an issue for all of us, and that nonprofits and businesses have to get involved in this issue. It's a massive issue. Our schools are failing our students, and they have been for a long time. Now, having said that, I do have faith in our newly elected mayor. I have a lot of faith in her. She's analytical, and she has terrific values, and I know this is very important to her. Pam Ettinger, who is the president of Bunker Hill Community College, is leading the search. I think they started out with 34 candidates. They got it down to 7, and now they're going to winnow that down to some number, and that number of folks will be made public.
In the same way you say that this can't be solved by one person, it also can't be solved by money alone.
No.
I've done this reporting over the years that traces the money. You can throw any amount of money at a problem and it doesn't necessarily fix it. But we keep seeing dollar signs attached to the problems in the Boston public schools. So considering that, where does that factor in?
Well, part of this goes back to community health. And so we live in one of the most unequal cities in America. I even think the mayor would agree with me. We have one part of our community that's prosperous and well off, and another part of our community that is struggling to make ends meet. And this is why I think the closing the racial wealth gap can be very helpful there. If we can create communities of wealth by creating and increasing the net worth of individuals in those communities, I think that in and of itself would help to close the opportunity gap, because it really is not an achievement gap, you've heard me say this before, would close the opportunity gap that we witness in our K through 12 system, because the lack of resources, the lack of opportunity, the lack of a clear hope creates social determinants that lie outside the school building, but impact the learning that goes on inside of the school building. And so I would agree with you. It's not just simply throwing, dollars at the school. It's got to be a all hands on deck kind of approach, and not all of it has to be money.
Okay, Lee Pelton, someone told me that you were quite the guy on the parquet floors in your younger days, and that you're a big fan of the Boston Celtics. And we were talking to Trenni Kusnierek, we're all beside ourselves because they can't seem to get through the third quarter without screwing it up. And one day they're great, and one day they can't hit the side of a barn. So you're going to give us your little Celtics take and forecast here?
Well, I will. I must tell you that I have the honor of having played on both of those parquet floors.
You're kidding?
Yes.
Do tell.
Well, it was. I was not part of a league, but I was. Anyway, let's just say I played 2 games before the new garden and the old garden.
You played on the parquet floor of the Boston Garden and the TD Garden?
Yeah, because it's the same floor.
It's the same floor.
Same floor. And I want to tell, there are dead spots.
I was a cheerleader on that floor.
Were you? Okay, there we go. We have something in common.
Yes, because my team made it to state finals year after year after year after year.
And there are dead spots, by the way.
I did not know that.
Yeah, they actually exist.
What does that mean? You can't shoot from there?
No, the ball just doesn't come up. It's bounce in the way that you expect it to bounce when you're good. So,
wow.
So anyway,
what position did you play? Were you a guard?
I was, back in the day, I could be a tall forward.
Oh, okay.
Today I could be a small guard, maybe.
Well, they're enormous. I want to know, how do people get to be like, I mean, 7 feet used to be unusual. Now they're all like 6'10", 6'11". Yeah. Jason Tatum, he's 6'11", isn't he?
Yeah, it's a mystery to me.
It's a mystery to me.
I have no idea. I have a 6'6" son.
You
so
do?
Yeah, he towers over me.
Wow.
But
Did he play basketball?
No, he doesn't.
Isn't that awful? Isn't that an American tragedy? Doesn't everybody always ask him? How you play?
All the time, all the time, all the time. So, this is a Greek drama, isn't it? And
it really is. I'm a nervous wreck.
I called the drama the other day. Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't. It's like reading Ulysses or the Iliad. You don't know who's going to win until the 12th chapter. So we will see. I just know it's exciting basketball.
It's great.
And I know my Celtics are going to win. That's all I know.
You think so?
Yeah.
So you think 6 or 7?
It may go 7. Yeah.
They're not going to be, like the Globe said today, cannon fodder for Steph Curry out there and the Warriors.
Well,
you don't think so? Yeah.
Well, no, it's been back and forth. So they lost home court advantage, and we neutralized that, and so we'll see what happens.
Well, we're very hopeful. I'm a fair weather fan, I must admit. I don't watch them all during the entire season. But when they get in the playoffs, the NBA, you really don't have to tune into the third quarter because they don't really do anything in the first half, do they? And then things kind of pick up toward the end of the third quarter. They start to get serious. But this, at least, they're serious from the beginning.
Right.
And it is really kind of fun.
It's been a lot of fun. It really has been a lot of fun.
I like Marcus Smart's green in his hair. I think you should keep that. That's brought up
I think I should do that too, don't you think?
Absolutely.
The president of the Boston Foundation with green spiky hair.
I think so.
I think I should do that.
We need to shake this city up. Absolutely.
Yeah, why not?
Exactly.
Lee Pelton, thank you very much.
Thank
Always
you.
great to talk to you.
Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We have been speaking with the president of the Boston Foundation, Lee Pelton. Coming up, the ACLU of Massachusetts Executive Director Carol Rose joins us. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Reporter Carrie Blakinger deeply understands the prison system as both a reporter and former inmate.
To me, it's just been so deeply meaningful to be able to tell stories about people who are in the places that I've been
Now she's telling her story. Corrections in Ink this afternoon on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And South County, Rhode Island, featuring 100 miles of coastline and 20 public beaches. South County visitors can find many ways to enjoy the water in the Ocean State. Learn more at southcountyri.com. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com.
Trusted, local news. This is 89.7 WGBH, WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. Boston's local NPR.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jared Bowen is in for Jim Browdy, and we are live from the Boston Public Library, where we are every Tuesday and Friday, and we are streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. So in 2020, Massachusetts codified, abortion access into law through the Roe Act, but with the fall of federal abortion protections likely coming this month, as apparent in a leaked draft from the Supreme Court opinion toppling Roe v. Wade, the state is taking steps to go even further beyond Roe. Joining us now to discuss reproductive protections is the Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts, Carol Rose. Hello, Carol.
Hello, it's great to be here. See you both.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming in, Carol. So what is the deal? What are we doing to make sure that we can protect and expand abortion access no matter what the Supreme Court...
With foresight, we should add. You've been working on this for a while.
Yeah, we've been working on it for a long time because we saw it coming. So the ACLU of Massachusetts, along with our coalition partners, Planned Parenthood, Action League of Massachusetts, and REN, Reproductive Equity Now, have formed a new coalition that includes other groups as well. Those are the three founders, called the Beyond Roe Coalition. And we've put out an agenda that basically does the following things. First, it's going to make sure that we expand abortion, other reproductive health care access, so it's not just for people with money. And that there's money to make sure people who need abortion care can get it. The second thing that we're doing is to make sure that we're supporting providers and patients, because since we passed the Roe Act in the last legislative session, people are going to start coming to Massachusetts when they need reproductive health care. And then the third thing is to really expand education and research efforts to make sure that we have a full understanding of the best kind of health care that's available and how do we make sure it's available for everyone, including contraceptive care and things like that, which are also under attack if the leaked Supreme Court decision were to become the final decision.
What's the place you expect Massachusetts to have, knowing that you've been working on these for a couple of years, because as you say, you saw this coming, but also I find this so interesting. Direct flights to Boston matter here because people will find the most economic means possible to be able to come here. So
right, and they already are. We've already in our work with healthcare providers, we're already seeing an increase in people coming from out of state to Massachusetts seeking healthcare, including reproductive health care. And so I think we have to make sure that we take all steps to make sure that the providers here, as well as the patients here, have everything they need to be able to do their work and not to be in danger.
So there's so much confusion, I think, about this whole thing with the Supreme Court, that we will be okay, we're going to have these added protections and expanded access and so forth. But there's a great fear, and I don't know if politically this would actually happen, but there is a great fear of the federal government outlawing abortion in all 50 states. My understanding is, unless they were to make the fetus a person, the personhood bills that are pending, then we'd be okay in Massachusetts. But if they do decide that the fetus is a person at the federal level, then they could outlaw abortion and their federal law would overtake our state
That's
law.
right, under the Supremacy Clause.
Yeah.
So what's really was so upsetting about the leaked decision from Justice Alito was that it basically sort of implied that that's what they were planning to do. And if you would put the breadcrumbs down for Congress, if they were to choose to do so, to be able to make it so that we'd go back to the terrible old days where people would still continue to get abortions. They would just do it through back alleys. They would just do it through self-induced abortions, things like that, which are far more dangerous than getting an abortion, which is not particularly dangerous, certainly a lot less dangerous than actually giving birth. right? So abortion itself is not a very dangerous procedure, but when you don't let people do it in the right way and they resort to having to do it through back alleys, then we're going to see the rise in deaths again. And that's just so terribly tragic for people who say that they care about life.
And you're a lawyer.
I am.
What do you think about the prospects of actually being able to ban mail of people that are seeking medical abortions through the mail? I mean,
Telemedicine?
Yeah, like a regular person, I think, what are they going to do? Look through your mailbox? Or are they going to look where you're looking online and trace your online activities? I mean, there's a lot of people that might be, practically speaking. Could that happen?
Sure. No, of course it could happen. So what will happen is if a person is in Texas, let's just say, for example, where we've already seen the Bounty Act, they are there. They could be subject to some kind of prosecution, criminal prosecution. Then the question becomes if there's a doctor, a provider in Massachusetts who's talking to them through telemedicine and helping them through telemedicine, whether that doctor would then become subject to some sort of a criminal prosecution. Hopefully not, but this is a really unclear area of the law. We've never had this kind of a situation before. And so the real question that we have now, and that we're working with the state legislature, and both the House and the Senate have shown a real desire to work on this, is to what kind of legal protections can we put in place so that doctors and other abortion care providers here in Massachusetts can be as protected as they possibly can be from the long arm of states like Missouri or Texas that have threatened to reach across the borders and try to seize our providers. For the most part, I think we're going to be able to do that. But we have to see what specifically the court rules, first of all, and then what the various states do after that.
And that could be if a provider here in Boston, say, were prescribing medical abortion to a woman in Texas.
Right. And so what the state legislature has proposed to do, which is a really good thing, is to try to come up with various legal protections, and we're working with them on that, to make sure that our providers here in Massachusetts aren't going to be, shipped off to another state and somehow to be criminally prosecuted. So that's what we're making sure that our providers here can continue to do their job. It's a scary time, and one would think, I never thought we'd be here, but here we are.
And I wonder if everything that we've been talking about is based on assumptions over the last month, because of course it was a draft decision confirmed by the court. To what extent do you think you have a full grasp of what will come out of the court?
Well, thank you, Jared. That's a really important question. And people should know that right now abortion remains legal under the Constitution throughout the whole country. And so that's still the law of the land. Most likely, in a typical case, that if it hadn't been leaked, that initial decision would be modified over time as there's conversations among the justices. What we don't know is whether the fact that it was leaked, is that going to make those justices who seem to be signing on to that sort of embed in their decision and be immovable, or is it going to actually open up the door for them to change their minds? I would anticipate we'll have something slightly different, more narrow, but I don't think that it's going to be a completely different. I think they are still going to, whether in deed or in name or in deed, basically overturn the protections that Roe v. Wade gave us for the last 50 years.
We're talking to Carol Rose, who is the president of the ACLU in Massachusetts. One of our staff alerted us to this story, which I did not see. I'd never heard of this before, and it made me very nervous that the Supreme Court may hear the so-called 800-pound gorilla of election law cases, which, as I understand it, would allow the United States Supreme Court to interfere with elections, and it would prevent state courts from overruling even racist gerrymanders?
Yeah, so this is a really pernicious move. We more bad news out of the U.S. Supreme Court right now, right? So basically what this is, and we'll know next week whether the court plans to take up this case, but basically what they're going to look at if they take it up would be, they take it up in the fall of 22, and it would go, they'd make a decision probably in the summer of 23, but that's before the 24 election. So basically this goes back to a really convoluted theory known as the independent state legislature's doctrine, which dates back to Bush v. Gore in 2000. And basically, this is a reading of the Constitution that some, what some people call the Bush leaguers, have been pushing
That's
forward.
Cute.
That's Akila Marr from Yale Law School called it that. And basically, that's a theory that would say that the state court, when a state legislature takes an action, such as to overturn the popular vote and say they're going to put their own electors in instead, or to do things like political gerrymandering or racial gerrymandering, that the state's courts can't intervene.
Yeah.
Because the Constitution itself says the words, the state legislature shall have the power to determine the elections. The problem with that is that in the Constitution itself, the structure of the Constitution is set up so that the checks and balances system, where you have a court, you have the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch, operates both at the state level and the federal level. They're trying to read the checks and balances out of the state constitution by saying that state courts can't intervene if the legislatures overturn a popular election. And so it's just a direct attack on our democracy. It's really wild that no one ever imagined that this would become a theory that would be taken seriously. And yet, here we have the possibility that the court may take that up. And the implications for our democracy for the 2024 election are really quite dire, because it means that the people who go out to vote, who overcome all of the efforts to prevent them from voting that are already there in so many states, it wouldn't matter, because the state legislatures, who may be controlled by one party, probably the far right, would just be able to overturn it, and the state courts couldn't do anything to stop them. So it's really pernicious, and I hope will be ruled unconstitutional.
Well, I know we have a 6-3 court, and conservatives are running the show, but this seems a little extreme even for this bunch, I think.
I hope you're right, Marjorie, but I'm not sure it is too extreme for this bunch. This is a pretty extreme bunch. I'll just say that.
Even going back, it's hard to reconcile this, going back to their originalist thought and how ordinarily you would think that they would interpret this and rule.
Correct.
Doesn't seem to add up.
No, it just doesn't add up, and it really undermines what we all learn in 8th grade civics class, or at least we used to learn in 8th grade civics class, is that you have a system of checks and balances at the federal level and checks and balances at the state level. And to really dismantle the tools of our democracy, and to have the Supreme Court dismantling the tools of our democracy, just really shows the kind of a threat that we're under right now. Whether we're talking about Roe v. Wade, after 50 years of reliance on that suddenly they just would do away with it, irrespective of precedent, or that they would go with this independent state legislators doctrine and somehow take away the right of the people to vote. These are fundamental attacks on our democracy, and it's why it's so important that we pay attention and that we fight back, and that's what the ACLU is here to do.
So one last thing about this, because you always think, okay, if something happens, you can take it to the court.
Right. I'll see you in court.
I'll see you in court.
Right.
So I don't want to cast aspersions on the wonderful folks up in Beacon Hill, but that would make me very nervous if there were things that Beacon Hill could do, and you would have no recourse.
And you would have no recourse to go to the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts. And that's that checks and balances that is so important, and that we have to seek to try to protect.
We're in big trouble here, Jared. Big trouble. Big trouble here, Jared.
Well, in the prior segment, Carol, she just basically foisted it all the other generations anyway.
Yeah, well, because there was a very horribly depressing piece in the Atlantic that I was reading for, this is what it was called. I was talking about this with Lee Pelton because I read this and I was about to shoot myself. Only kidding. The Doom Spiral of Pernicious Polarization. And it was talking about what big trouble the United States of America is in terms of not even having shared values. I hope some of us do have shared values, but I'm beginning to wonder.
But as Lee also pointed out, history, we've been in many of these arenas before.
Absolutely. And I would just also say to anybody listening who feels despair, we don't act because
that's me. Tell me, Carol.
We don't act because we have hope. We act because we must, and from our action, we create the hope, Marjorie. And I know that sounds Pollyanna-ish, but I actually think it's important. We never thought we'd have equal marriage, just as an example, right? And then we acted and we created it. And we here in Massachusetts have an obligation. We do live in a place with greater freedom and greater liberty than many other people in the rest of the country. So
that's right. That's why some people think we should secede.
Well, that's for another day. No, but we have an obligation to truly to be a beacon, to go further, to pass the Roe Act and to protect women's rights, to pass the laws for equal marriage, to make sure that we do the right thing on racial justice and on immigrants' rights, all of these things, because we become a beacon. And while, the shadow of authoritarianism may be spreading, there has to be a beacon of light. And I think Massachusetts needs to be that. We can't sit back and say that, well, we'll be okay, so I'm not going to worry about the rest of the country. We won't be if we don't take action now and to protect our fundamental liberties here in Massachusetts. And that's where the ACLU's focus is right now, day in and day out, and I think people need to take hope from that. But also, to step up and to understand that each of us as citizens has a role to play in protecting our democracy, and we can't sit back and assume someone else will do it for us. You know, we are the cavalry.
Well, speaking of what you're doing, the plight of the Ukrainians has kind of overshadowed the plight of the Afghans and what we saw happening there, and how many refugees were trying to escape, especially how entrenched they were in the country and what that entrenchment meant for the Taliban and how they were literally targeted. What's happening with those refugees now?
Right. So this is a case that has a great personal interest for me. You know, before I became a lawyer and went to the ACLU, I was actually a foreign correspondent, and I was based in the AFPAC region. So I spent about 4 years in that part of the world and got to know it a little bit. And particularly, I got to know the women, because I was one of the few people who was able to go and talk to the women. And so when my staff came to me and they said they wanted to file this lawsuit on behalf of a number of Afghans who are seeking humanitarian parole, including a woman judge who issued rulings against the Taliban, family members who worked for the US government, I was really pleased that they wanted to do that, because again, it hits home for me. And so this is a case that we filed last week where the ACLU is alleging that the humanitarian parole program, and humanitarian parole is a program that the U.S. Citizenship Services puts forward. It's like the sister of ICE that gives services. And humanitarian parole permits people to apply for a short-term stay because they're in a humanitarian crisis. For example, the woman judge who issued rulings against the Taliban. And they get to come here, and then they have a little bit of time, a little bit of breathing space to be safe, and then they can apply, if they can, for asylum or other forms of protection. And so the US government set this up last August when we were evacuating people and sort of in a chaotic situation, and about 100,000 Afghans came out, but it was very chaotic. But a lot of people were left behind, including our clients. And so they filed for what was called humanitarian parole. And they each had to pay hundreds of dollars so they could have their application reviewed. And then, without telling anybody, the US government just decided to halt the program. They just stopped processing. They took the money, but they stopped processing the humanitarian parole. And then at the same time, they decided to set up a humanitarian parole situation for refugees from the Ukraine, which we also support. And they waived the rights to a fee, and about 6,000 people came in under the humanitarian parole system from the Ukraine. But there's still more than 4,000 people who've applied, who've paid the fee from Afghanistan, and they've just been frozen out. So we filed a lawsuit last week on behalf of these Afghan families who have relatives here in Massachusetts, who want to come here, who applied, followed all the rules, and would like to have this procedure applied to them. The really sad thing about this case is already 3 family members of one of our clients have already been killed. By the Taliban. So time is of the essence, and we really hope that the federal judge who has this case, Judge Wolf, will hear it and move quickly on it, because their lives are in danger day in and day out.
Carol, before you go, tell us what you're doing on the I Know Your Sheriff campaign.
Oh, this is
I have
such
to
a
look
great...
up my sheriff every time to make sure I get the right guy. Patrick McDermott.
I can help you with that, because just today, the ACLU Data for Justice program has put out a new technology tool, a data tool at data.aclum.org/knowyoursheriff, where people can look up and find out who their sheriff is. And we're really off to the races today, because today's the day that we know who's going to be running. We have actually, 8 incumbent sheriffs will face at least 1 challenger, which is twice as many as we had last time, and 5 are running unopposed and 1 is retiring. So we're going to have a really hot sheriff's race this year, and the poll that we talked about last time I was here shows that the vast majority of us don't even know who our sheriff is. We don't know that they're elected for 6 years. We don't know what they do, which is they oversee about 6,000 people who are locked up for usually under 2.5 years. So these are people coming back to our communities. And the vast majority of people in Massachusetts understand that we need to make sure people who are in sheriff's custody get substance use treatment, that they get education, rehabilitation, these things, so that they can rejoin our society and be productive and contributing members. So this is one of the most exciting voter education campaigns that we do. And you know, we talked earlier about despair and how do we build our democracy. I think one of the most important things that we do is voter education. Because when people get involved in their democracy, I think of it as thickening the muscle. Like, democracy is a muscle. The more we exercise it and use it, the stronger democracy gets. And so when the assaults come in other areas, we're mobilized, we're ready. Last time around when we did a voter education campaign around what a difference a DA makes, a lot of those people then became poll watchers, nonpartisan poll watchers. Then they became involved in their own communities and then their school boards and their town halls and all these ways. So the more that people get engaged, especially at the local level, the stronger our democracy is and the safer we all are from these onslaughts.
Okay, Carol. Got the bicep curls there for
Got
the
it going,
democracy.
Marjorie.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll go home and do some tonight in front of the television set.
The harbinger of hope from the
harbinger
ACLU.
of hope. That's right. Thank you very much, Carol.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. We've been speaking with Carol Rose, Executive Director of the ACLU of Massachusetts. Coming up, CNN's John King, who just received a big honor here in Boston over the weekend.
Yes, he did.
You are listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
Thank you.
There's a certain joy to events.
Support for our programs comes from you. And safety insurance. You always want your kids to be safe. Now you can show them the Drive with Safety app from Safety Insurance, designed to help us all drive better. You can ask an independent agent about safety insurance. They'll help you manage life's storms. And Lexus Broadway in Boston, presenting Wicked, returning to the Citizens Bank Opera House June 8th through July 24th. Ticket information and availability online at lexusbroadwayinboston.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live today from the Boston Public Library, as we do every Tuesday and every Friday, and we are streaming on youtube.com GBH News. But Jim Brady is not here. He has a day off. Jared Bowen is filling in, and we are now joined on Zoom by John King, CNN's national political correspondent, host of Inside Politics weekdays at noon, and the winner of the New England Emmys Governor's Award for recognition of a fantastic career. Congratulations, John King.
Congratulations.
Marjorie and Jared, thank you. They don't say the old guy award in the description, but that's kind of what the Dorchester in me kind of bristled a little bit. It's a great honor, don't get me wrong. It was a great honor and a privilege to be recognized. But I bristled a little bit like, wait a minute, I'm not done yet. But it was great because, Marjorie, I was also in the audience when the Emmy Award-winning Jared Bowen, was announced.
That's right.
Jared's Emmy was announced as well, and that was actually the best part for me. It's a challenging time for our business. We talk about this a lot on Tuesdays, but I was in the room with a lot of really talented people, a lot of really young and diverse people in the room, and just to see the new, young, rising people in the New England local news market and the storytellers, whether it's arts like Jared focuses on, and it was just great. It was great to be there. We get cynical sometimes, and we're about to talk about some things that make people cynical. So for me, it's just like I always call this my Tuesday therapy when I talk to you and Jim or Jared when he fills in. It was great to be in a room of people who just love what we do and love the gift and the privilege of what we do. We get paid to tell stories. We get paid to be curious. That's a gift. And so when you get cynical, you have to hit the reset button. And so that was the best part of getting the statue for me.
Didn't you have something to do with this, Jared Bowen?
Well,
aren't you some honcho over there?
I may have just facilitated the connection to hopefully, we could all make this happen.
Jared
is very... didn't that sound like somebody in Washington when you asked them a direct question?
He's wired. Jared is very
I knew a guy who knew a guy.
Knew a guy who knew a guy.
But congratulations, we're so thrilled for you.
Good for you, John
We're
King.
going to make Jared an honorary resident of Dorchester. He knows the guy who knows the guy. That's good.
That's right. Well, John King, before we get to what's going on with guns, we've been talking about guns all day. Tell us about how big of a deal, what the perspective is on the Proud Boys being charged with sedition over January 6th.
That's a much more serious charge. That's a seditious conspiracy is a much more serious charge. It's tantamount to treason. There's a separate legal definition for treason, so the lawyers out there will make that clear. But the Justice Department, after, remember early on, people were saying, is the Merrick Garland's a cautious guy, a former judge? Is the Biden Justice Department going to be aggressive? Or there is a school of thought, we don't want to relitigate past campaigns, right? That's not healthy for democracy to be constantly relitigating past grievances. But this is proof that the Justice Department thinks January 6th was different. This is not, some past political grievance or some minor political offense where you just think, okay, let's just let it go and move on. The Justice Department is taking this very seriously. They have charged the leader and 4 other prominent Proud Boy members with seditious conspiracy, essentially upping the ante and making clear in the indictment that they view this as a well thought out, well executed plot, a conspiracy, not a crowd that ended up at the Capitol and then something went wrong and they got incited and they rushed into the building. The indictment here makes clear that they believe that this was a calculated, methodical plan to be prepared for violence on that day. And so the interesting thing in court, and then when we get to the January 6th hearings, where this will also be a focus starting Thursday night, is, okay, if you can make that case about the Proud Boys, who in Trump's orbit were they talking to? Who in the Trump campaign's orbit were they talking to? So conspiracy is a broad word, but the committee and now the Justice Department seem very determined to make the point that this was not one day, that this started the day after the election. It ran through January 6th, and to some degree, it continues today.
And it's interesting to see how this case has come about. Again, it may give us a sense of what we're going to see later this week in these primetime sessions, but this happened, it seems, because some of the Proud Boys turned and started talking to the government.
Right, the threat of jail. I started covering the courts when I started my career for the AP in Providence and then in Boston, and this is often the greatest weapon, leverage prosecutors have is the threat of jail. And do you want to spend time in jail or do you want to cooperate with us? And you're seeing that. You're seeing sort of textbook. I remember covering organized crime when I worked in Providence, Rhode Island. And this is how you do it. You start with people lower down and you get them to start to turn on the people higher up. And that's what's happening here, whether it's in the case of the Proud Boys, where some of the members of the organization are cooperating, whether it's the case of the other witnesses for the January 6th committee. There's a lot of headlines when somebody refuses to cooperate, like a Peter Navarro who was just held in contempt, or Kevin McCarthy, the House Republican leader. But we all know this from being reporters. Yes, you love to talk to the big fish, but you often get your information from the worker bees, right? Who sees the documents across the desk? Who knows who was in the meeting? Who knew the schedule? Who was carrying the bag down the hall when a conversation happened between 2 of the principal players? So the committee has actually done meticulous reporting work, if you will, and we're going to see how good beginning Thursday night.
John King, speaking of Thursday night, I understand that Fox News, which attracts a lot of conservative viewers, is not going to even be televising these hearings. So, and I don't know what conservative talk radio is going to do, but I wonder whether anyone that's on the side of President Trump, do or die, no matter what he does, can be persuaded or convinced, no matter what they come out saying Thursday night and next week when the hearings continue.
I try to remain an optimist in life. My own story keeps me being an optimist in life. I would urge people of every political persuasion, if you are a very left, anti-Trump, throw the book at all of them person, you have that right. If you are a pro-Trump, Democrats are making way too big of a deal about this, you have every right to believe that. What I would ask everybody is, this is an incredibly important historical presentation, just for the historical record, to try to put together the evidence of what happened that day, just like the 9/11 Commission and other investigations of big days. Why can't we all just try that? Go into it with an open mind. Don't throw away your opinions, don't throw away your views, but why don't we listen for a few hours? Just listen for a few hours. And there might be some things that a liberal or a Democrat might say, oh, I thought this happened, but now they're telling me it was that. The volume might come down a little bit, and the volume might go way up on other issues. What is the harm in that? That's the part. Our politics have become so polarized. People live in their own information silos where they don't even listen or respect anybody else's opinion. I don't know why we can't have an open mind for it. I could be funny and snarky. I could try to be funny and snarky and say that, the Constitution does give Fox a constitutional right not to self-incriminate. And maybe that's why they're not doing it. But I would never say that, Marjorie.
But it is an odd thing to me. I don't want to put you on the spot because you're at CNN, but it is an odd thing to me that this is a big deal, no matter how you look at it, that a major news network and you could say the people at night are opinions, they're not journalists, and it's whatever you want to say. But nonetheless, it's odd. I mean, do you know what the decision process was, that why they're not covering this?
I don't. I've read what everybody else can read publicly. Look, their primetime lineup is where they make their money. It is where they get their highest ratings. It's a business. It's a business. I was snarky a moment ago. I have views as an individual and as a citizen. I have views as a reporter of how I think the business should be. And my views, there's some difference within my own building. But look, I would not call them a news network. I would call them an information channel. And they're advocates. MSNBC in prime time, and look, my network's not perfect. I know there are people going to say John King from CNN. I'm not here to criticize anybody. They have made this decision, and I think people out there watching can decide what it says about them. I do not view Fox, especially in prime time, as a news network. I just don't. And I don't say that to be critical. I just think it's factually, it's not what they do. And I don't think they would say that's what they do. Sean Hannity doesn't say he's a newsman. Tucker Carlson doesn't say he's a newsman. They are information people who have an agenda, who have a view, and people watch it. And the First Amendment belongs to everybody. I want to make that clear. I do believe that. I have no issue with them existing. If they call themselves a news network in prime time, I would send that one to the fact check machine.
Final question for me on this before we move on. If you're an avid consumer of news, you feel like you know this story. We have read so much over the last year and a half. How much do you expect will be a revelation, bombshells, as they deliberately program this as primetime narrative drama programming?
I think our conversations, it's been largely with Jim and Marjorie, Jared, but even a couple times when you filled in, is every week we seem to learn something new. So again, that's why I go back to the open-minded thing. This committee has done meticulous work. They've interviewed more than 1,000 people. They have reviewed millions of pages of documents. They've brought in federal prosecutors. We are still learning things, even though we have the 9/11 report, we're still learning things about what happened on that day. We're still learning things about what happened on other big days. History takes a long time to fill it all in. That's why they call it history. News of the moment and history are different things, even though they're related about information and about facts. So I think we are going to learn some things. And I think the committee promises, and they've delivered so far, they promise new information. They also promise new context. And I think the important part is the connecting the dots, connecting events of the days immediately following the election. Can you connect them? Can you draw a credible line of fact information in the meeting, in the communication cycle to get to January 6th? I do think we're going to learn new things. And that's why I say I just wish everybody would just hit the pause button, have an open mind and watch, and then say, okay, did I or did I not learn new important things? If your answer is no, fine, that's your right. You have your right to your opinion. But if you come in with I'm not going to, then you're not going to listen closely. So come in with an open mind and see what happens.
We're talking to John King from CNN. John, I know you were talking earlier on your show about what, if anything, is going to happen with gun legislation in Washington. Where are we?
I think we're in a place where if something happens, and I believe it's still an if, it's going to be something relatively modest and will not satisfy people who want to either ban assault weapons again or even raise one compromise floated was raise the age of purchase from 18 to 21. That's not going to happen either. I mean, they're not done yet, so it's possible, but you can see from the issue here is you need 10 Republican senators. You have to get to 60 in the Senate. It's been an issue on every other issue we've talked about over the last year and a half. But on this issue, without 60 votes, meaning 10 Republican senators, if you keep all the Democrats, nothing passes. So there may be improvement. They don't even use the word expanded anymore. Some improvement on background checks. It is possible that those improvements would include that if somebody 18 tries to buy an assault weapon, that you could then look at their juvenile records, which right now are sealed and not made available. And so that would require a waiting period. That would create at least a couple of day period where if somebody was, my language will not be right, and mental health professionals might get mad at me, but if somebody was at the volcanic boiling point planning to do something, they couldn't, as we saw, in some of these recent cases, buy a gun that day. Is there something where you can at least just have a clock trigger that won't prevent all of these mass shootings, but maybe would prevent one or two. So they're looking at things like that. You see Republicans today talking about constitutional rights, about even strengthening red flag laws, and the federal government will not pass a federal red flag law. The idea is to adopt a set of standards and then send them out to states with incentives. Law enforcement agencies, state mental health agencies would get more federal money if they implemented these things. But I would be, A, looking for this to carry on into next week. There was some hope they would get it done this week. And B, if you you should have very modest expectations. Now, as someone who's watched a lot of things collapse here in Washington, despite what John King, individual citizen, might think should be done, as someone who's covered Washington a long time, I know a lot of people will be disappointed in a modest package. If Washington can actually pass something in an election year that does something, it may be too low of a bar to set for my town, but that would be something.
Go ahead.
It's something actually Marjorie pointed out to me this morning, a couple of Texas billionaires stepping forward for Governor Abbott and weighing in on their need, their desire to see some level of gun control. We see states taking action now. I feel like the media coverage is more sustained to a level at which it'll be harder and harder to ignore if it is sustained. So will these outside pressures come to bear, do you think, in what happens in Washington?
I believe they can come to bear. You have Matthew McConaughey, who's been meeting with Democratic senators, Republican senators, the actor, who's from Uvalde, Texas, by the way, and he's a gun owner, by the way. He's at the White House for the briefing. That's going to be in a few minutes today. So you have some celebrities, you have some big money billionaires you mentioned. I know a bunch of Republicans who ran a full-paid ad in the Dallas Morning News trying to help support John Cornyn, who's in these negotiations pushing for improved background checks and maybe red flag laws, and also saying they should at least consider raising the age. So you do see different people stepping forward. The conversation is a little different this time, Jared. I still see no evidence that you have 10 Republicans willing to raise the age, for example. I just don't see it. And so I would say this, that one of the conversations in town is if you can pass something that's not a new gun restriction, but is designed to help with the background checks and with red flag laws or mental health capacity, if you can get a bipartisan agreement on that, maybe you can come back next year and say, look, none of you got voted out of office, and this has helped a little bit. Can we try to do something more? I do think there's a fascinating, and a lot of people are impatient because Washington has done nothing for so long, so they get impatient with what I'm about to say. But there is a fascinating role of government debate happening here too, where say Rick Scott, who was the governor of Florida after Parkland, signed a law that did raise the age, signed a law that did have red flag laws, signed a law that did do some things at the state level. He says he stands by that law. He says it was a good law and it's made Florida safer, but he would not vote for it as a United States senator because he says states should do that. So I do think, again, to the open mind thing, liberals and progressives who want Washington to do this should at least listen to other people who say, well, let's have Washington do this, and this should go to the states, if that's a genuine conversation. The problem with this and so many other issues, immigration, abortion, I could go on, is that people are just saying things for political sound bites to get out of the interview and move on. But to the degree that you could get people to come together and start to build respect and start to build understanding, again, I'm probably an idiot for being an optimist, but every time I just hope that this is the time that at least if it's a half a step forward, that beats no step forward. And maybe the same people can get together down the road and do a little bit more.
Now, I love to talk to optimists, John King, because I'm such a pessimist myself. I like to have other people tell me I shouldn't be so grim. So tell us what to look for. A bunch of primaries going on today. What should we be watching?
I think the most interesting ones are in California, in that you have it's a big Democratic state, right? And the Democrats are trying to hold control of the House. History and the current polling tells you that's unlikely, and Republicans are going to take the House. But we have 5 months. Literally 5 months from today to Election Day. So we'll see what happens. There are a couple of Republican primaries there where Democrats are hoping that Trumpy candidates knock off the Republican incumbents because Democrats think there's 2 or 3 of them where Biden won the district, but it's represented by a Republican in the House. And the Democrats think that if the Republicans nominate the quote unquote wrong candidate, they might have a shot there. And that's important because Democrats are going to lose in lots of other places. So they're looking for any place they can help with their math. But the most important thing, I think, is you have this recall of the district attorney in San Francisco, and you have the LA mayor's race where, as time has passed from the death of George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd, and the conversations about criminal justice reform and defunding police, even among Democrats now, you have a reset the crime debate happening. And it's because the crime stats are way up in San Francisco and they're way up in Los Angeles. And so can Karen Bass win outright in the Los Angeles mayor's race, or will this billionaire businessman who was a Republican, now turned to Democrat, who has talked about adding cops and being tougher on crime, force a runoff? That's interesting. Is this prosecutor, a liberal prosecutor, is he recalled in one of America's most liberal cities because people are frustrated by crime? So I do think there's a reset of the crime debate. And I also think, I just talked about crime a lot. I also think it's careful. People in our business need to be careful. people are just anxious, uneasy, on edge because of 2.5 years of COVID, now inflation. This is an anxiety election year. And different people in different places, will stack the issues that add up to their anxiety in a different way. So it's not just crime, but California is going to teach us a lesson in this very volatile, anxious political year.
Well, John King, thank you very much. How late are you going to be up tonight, John King? Going to be a long night in front of the magic wall?
We're doing a little dip in and out. Because of other issues, we're not spending as much time, because most of the big ones are in California, the time is late. But even when I'm not on television, Marjorie, that's what I do. I do math. I look at data. I spend time on census. How many guys at 11 o'clock at night are on census.gov? That would be me.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to introduce you from now on as the Governor's Life Achievement winner from the Emmys of New England. Thank you very much, John. As always, great to talk to you.
Thank you both.
Okay.
Thank
See
you
you
so
later.
much, and congratulations again. John
Yes.
King is a national correspondent for CNN, where he also hosts Inside Politics weekdays at noon. Well, coming up is Punctuality having a moment. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
What does it mean to bring an indigenous perspective to the New Testament? The lead translator of a First Nations Bible on using intertribal collaborations to reframe foundational Christian teachings. I'm Melissa Harris Perry, and that's next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
This afternoon at 2, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you and New England Dental Group, committed to helping you stop hiding your smile by offering a variety of dental implant solutions to replace missing teeth in one of their 7 locations. Learn more at newenglanddentalgroup.com. And See Plymouth. Plymouth is a New England escape where visitors can see Plymouth Rock, watch for whales, and dine on seafood. From a town brook sunrise to shopping in the Cultural District. More on the See Plymouth app. Brought to you by visitma.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We are live from the Boston Public Library, as we are every Tuesday and Friday. And we are also streaming online at youtube.com, GBH News. Jared is here, Jim Browdy is not. So, 3 years into the pandemic, and today the New York Times declares in 2022 it's no longer fashionable to be fashionably late. And this is because we're on Zoom so much, you don't have an excuse. You didn't get stuck in traffic.
That commute from the bathroom to the kitchen is killer.
It's because there's fewer people in the office. We've made efficiency more of a priority now because we have our work at home schedule and our work at workplace schedule. So we're asking you, are you like I am kind of late a lot, running behind. I'm better than I used to be, but I'm not really very punctual. Or are you more of a Jared? I didn't know. You're on time all the time. Is that correct, Jared?
Well, my theory is it's because my whole life has been in broadcast television, and you have to meet deadline.
There you go.
The option of you don't have an option to not miss deadline, or you don't make air. So I guess I just inherited that in my personal life.
Okay.
And I'm always right there on the nose.
And then there's Jim, who's always early, and it's really
an
annoying.
even better strategy.
Yeah, he's always early. But what do you think? Has your punctuality changed during this pandemic? Is punctuality having a moment? Or you're usually punctual in person but find it very hard to stay focused when your entire life is on a single Zoom screen. We're opening up the lines, 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970. You can call us at that number or text us at that number. You can also tweet us at Boss Public Radio. I mean, this piece starts with an anecdote. This is a New York Times piece, as I said, Punctuality is having a moment. And it starts with this Tina Brown. Remember, she used to be the editor of The New Yorker, and she's a big media star. She's British, and is she American? She married a British guy, right? She's an American, married a British guy.
I thought she was British.
Maybe she's
I'm
British
not sure.
too. Anyway, she's a big deal in the swank, swish media circles in New York City. And she was having a book party. And she talked about how usually, and I was like this too, if you get invited somewhere, even for dinner, I always thought it was kind of rude to show up like right on time. If the dinner's at 6:30, you should at least give them like till 6:40 in case they're scurrying around madly getting things together, or maybe 6:45. Well, now she's saying, and this was true at her book party, but the whole place was packed 5 minutes after it opened because people have been cooped up for so long. They're so excited to get invited to something.
They started getting dressed at 3.
Exactly. Even if it's a COVID super spreader, they zipped over there really early. And the people are having dinner earlier because they're living at home now in a different reality. People are going out at 6 o'clock for dinner instead of going out. That's assuming they can even afford it with the inflation. They used to go out at 7:30. So, and the Zoom thing, right? That's the big thing. If you have a Zoom meeting at 10, how can you be late for a Zoom meeting at 10 if you're working from home?
Well, and you know, there are all the distractions that you had before you don't have. So if you're working from home, you don't have the person who grabs you in the office hall on the way out the door, so you're not late there. You're not presumably picking up stuff on the way home or running into traffic. And so, especially if you're at home, I think a lot of people want to get out of home. And so you're eager to get there. And it just collapses the day, right? To have everything happen sooner.
Now, one thing I've learned from Jim Brady, and this is a very good lesson, because I do tend to be late, and it's very stressful to be late, because you're always battling the traffic, and it makes you probably drive too fast, and maybe risk going through a yellow light, which you really shouldn't do. You should stop for the yellow light.
You know
blah,
that your
blah,
friends
blah.
are halfway into their martinis already, and
exactly,
you're not.
Exactly. So I now have this new strategy where I get places early, and I bring my work with me.
Oh.
So if I haven't read the paper, or I haven't done my email, or I haven't read stuff for the show, I'll just bring it with me, and I'll get there like 10 minutes early. It's much less stressful. But I've also found, you know how you'll have a meeting at work pre-pandemic days, and it was supposed to be from 10 to 11, and it always bleeds into 11. It always ends up 11:05, 11:10. I don't think that happens on Zoom.
I don't think I haven't seen it happen.
No, I think everybody's much more punctual on Zoom because you're sitting there looking at the clock.
Well, I always looked at it as you're taking something from somebody else too. If somebody else has made the effort to be there on time, and you have to acknowledge that they have a schedule too. If you're late, then you've taken that time. It's a little bit disrespectful, I think.
It is. Well, it is very disrespectful for people's time, but I think people do it. 877-301-8970 is the number. You can text us or email us. Jen is texting from Wellesley, and this is a big one. Therapy. People that have been doing therapy online. She says, for 2 years I did therapy online, was always on time. Now that I am in person, I needed to tell my therapist that I'm an eternally late person. I mean, I think that's really true. If you had a therapy appointment, and usually they're 50 minutes, right? You get 50 minutes. I guess it's because the therapist needs 10 minutes to take notes on the crazy things you said to her during your 50-minute therapy session or something, writing those down. But if you had it in the house, you never had to race there to get there on time. You never had to battle traffic. So what do you think about this? 877-301-8970 is the number to email or to text us on. And by the way, they also talk in this New York Times piece about politicians being late or early. Bill Clinton, notoriously late. Notoriously late. Joe Biden is often late. He's going to have the press conference at 11. We're in a panic because it's going to interfere with the start of our show. We're all worked up into a frenzy. Then he shows up at like 12:30 and screws up your whole day. George W. Bush was Mr. Punctuality, right? You didn't show up at his meetings right on time. He closed the door and you weren't getting into the meeting. So apparently there's been a sea change in New York City. Bill de Blasio was hopelessly late for everything. And the new mayor, Mayor Adams, the former police officer, is like George W. Bush. You don't show up on time, he locks the door, and you don't get in. So this is a pandemic kind of thing, right? This is a pandemic
Well,
kind
here's
of
a
thing.
little bit of a confession. I've actually found myself relaxing those rules a little bit because I thought, why did I spend all of that time and all of that energy? Because it's a little bit stressful to try to be somewhere on time, too.
Yeah.
Especially if you wait till the last minute.
Yeah, but it's not stressful if you're just coming into your living room and sitting, or coming into your desk.
No, that's a different story.
And sitting down on the home computer. So let's start with Allie in Framingham. What do you think, Allie?
Hi, Allie.
Hi. I just wanted to weigh in as someone who was working somewhere where we had kind of back-to-back Zoom meetings all day. I think oftentimes early in the morning, people will get to chatting and catching up on their weekend or catching up on the past day, and meetings will run over first thing. And then that just kind of trickles down into the rest of your day where everything is running like 5 to 10 minutes behind. So I think even in the world of Zoom, people are always going to be that like 5 to 7 minutes late, even when it's really easy to be on time when you're working from home.
So what's your excuse, though? for being 5 to 7 minutes late for Zoom. Were you brushing your teeth? You were dental flossing? You were taking a shower?
Our excuse was always just we ran over in our last meeting, and I think everyone kind of understood because it was happening to everyone.
Okay, well, that's a good one if your last meeting kept you over. I think meetings, Ali, thank you for the call. I mean, really, could we do with live our lives with fewer meetings? I think we'd all be happier.
Oh,
don't you think?
absolutely. Well, the other awkward thing about being on time when nobody else is to a Zoom meeting is then you open up your screen and you're just sitting there. And then you have to kind of freeze there because you can't do anything because you don't want to be caught mid anything when you're sitting there at home on your computer. So that's awkward too.
Yeah, that's right. You always have to remember that you are properly
Yep.
attired and properly groomed and properly, at least from the waist up.
You don't want to be caught mid-snack or mid-talking to somebody. Or
you don't.
Yeah.
877-301-8970. Riley from Worcester says, I'm always a little early except for parties because I prefer being bored for a few minutes and being stressed and rushing at the last minute. That is a big deal, that you are stressed and rushing at the last minute. And with smartphones, it's hard to be bored anyway, and that's another great point. Everybody has their phone with them all the time. You don't have to worry about being early and sitting there because you can check your email, you can message people, you can make phone calls, you can do all that kind of stuff. Matthew from Rochester, what do you think?
I think that there's a psychology that people don't want to get somewhere and then have to wait, sort of in opposition to what you just said.
Yeah.
I know my son likes to be at school on time, like exactly on time. He doesn't want to get there 3 minutes early. But with Zoom, you get there and you don't have to wait because everyone else is starting at the same allotted time.
Right, yeah. So is that better for you? Are you more punctual now because of this, Matthew, or not?
Yeah, I'm more punctual on Zoom. I'm not more punctual going out and about. I too am victim to that same psychology of I don't want to get there early and be trying to make small talk with the other two people who are there early.
Yeah, that's true.
Small talk, exactly.
There's nothing worse than being like the first person to show up at a party. I went to a party. I went to a party once. There were only 5 of us there, and we all had name tags. What do you think of that?
Did you not know everybody who was going to be there?
No, I didn't. I wasn't the hostess, so I didn't hand out the name tags. But I did think it was interesting that there were only a few of us there, and they handed out name tags. And if you're the first and second person there for that, and you know what they always say too in these psychotherapy things, that if you're somebody that's chronically late, it's because you want to make an entrance and be noticed. Isn't that the thinking?
We both know people like that, I think.
Oh, really? Who would those people be?
I'm not telling you. We're on the air.
Okay.
We can have a little confab after.
Yeah, and that somehow you're busier than other people. Your time is more valuable than other people. If you show up on time, you're kind of a loser, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but not anymore. Now, if Tina Brown is setting the new agenda.
She's setting the new agenda, but
not anymore.
But they at least wait until 6:30. What's really bad is to show up at somebody's party or dinner party 10 minutes early.
Yeah, I did that recently.
You did?
I was a half hour early, actually. Well, I thought it started at 6, and it started at 6:30, and I didn't feel like walking around anymore, so I just said, can I come over now? I'll set the table, whatever you need me to do.
So
just
you
put me to
called
work.
and asked.
I did.
Yeah, but that's a good thing. If you call and ask, it's not so bad. Kevin from Rosendale, what do you think?
I like where you guys are going with it. I'm picking up some of the subtleties there. I like it. But what people overlook is I like the Zoom. Actually, I like the concept. But what if someone hacks into your phone and changes your time around and
does that happen?
Oh, it happened to me.
Really?
Really?
Which international espionage ring did you irritate to have that happen?
I don't know. There's so many out there, really.
Yeah.
And
you know where they're all looking, Kevin? They're all looking in Rosendale. That's where they're all looking. They're saying, this is where we want to hack into people's phones. You got to watch the Rosendale crowd.
Have you ever been to Rosendale?
I have been to Rosendale, and let me tell you, Rosendale Square used to be kind of like, a pizza joint and a dry cleaners. Now you're getting very, very chic over there in Rosendale, Kevin. Things are on the up and up, wouldn't you say?
Well, most of it happened in Jamaica Plain, where I live. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's close enough to Rosendale, so.
Well, Kevin, watch out. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. The CIA
The truth is out there, right?
The truth is out there.
We got to get you off the line as soon as possible. Protect ourselves.
That's right. 877-301-8970 is the phone number.
That would be the most exciting thing to happen to me if somebody hacked into my phone and changed the times.
I know. It's very exciting. Heidi says she teaches high school in the western suburbs, and nobody told our high schoolers that punctuality is a thing. I've not seen it this bad. So I guess everybody's showing up really late.
What about this one? I start all of my meetings at 5 minutes after, like 10:05 or 2:35, just to give people an extra few minutes between calls, or if their last meeting went over. Well, that's very accommodating, but I thought they were going to go somewhere different, which is I actually give friends different times for meeting because I know which of my friends will be late, so I give them the wrong time so that they're actually on time.
So are there certain friends that are chronically late?
Yep.
Yeah,
I'm not saying you're among them.
No, I'm not always. I'm better.
No,
I'm
I've
better
never had
than
to give you the wrong time.
Thank you. I'm better than
the wrong day.
Than I used to be. Paul says he's walked out of doctor's offices when they're running more than a half hour late, and then I sent them a bill for not making the appointment on time, just as their policy states they would charge me. That's a good one, Paul. Do they ever actually pay you? That's what I want to know. Mosey and Swampscott. What do you think, Mosey?
Hi, Mosey.
Hey, Marjorie.
Yep.
Yeah, so a couple callers ago, it's funny to hear these conversations, Zoom versus real life, right? We're really in that digital spectrum there.
We are.
And I think it's funny where it's like, don't want to make small talk, but it's like, that's one thing that we have to think about. Sometimes that is life. Before phones, we made small talk.
We
and
did.
That's how we established.
It's all over now.
Connection. But it was funny at the end. He's like, yeah, I'm good with my Zoom calls, but, just real life. Just can't get it. I can't enact it. I can't figure it out. And it's like, well, maybe we got to make that small talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We do have to face our fear of socializing, God forbid.
Yeah,
Oh
Mosey, that's a good point. It is kind of very formal, right? You can't really shoot the breeze on the Zoom meetings, can you? I mean, you have to look and see who's talking. The little yellow box shows who's talking. You have to look at who's. No one's like engaging in small talk in Zoom meetings, are they?
No, you make a joke, it falls flat because suddenly 3 people have spoken at once, so nobody heard what you said, and
yeah,
it's awkward.
It's really kind of embarrassing. This is from Susan in Marblehead, pet peeve when someone texts me saying they're going to be late only a few minutes before the arrival time. They had to know way earlier they were going to be late. And by the way, I'm the type who thinks showing up on time is being late. Okay, Susan, I guess I won't be coming to your house anytime soon.
Waze kind of takes away a lot of excuses, does it not?
Waze
if somebody texts
does.
you and says, oh, I got stuck in traffic, really? Did you get stuck in traffic? Because you knew that exactly, as Susan says, 20 minutes ago when you left the house.
Okay, Jared, we're done.
Okay, we're done.
We're done.
Thank you for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Keep up with us 24/7
Oh,
by way of our...
we love that. We love that.
Nice applause here at the library by way of our podcast. Tune in tomorrow for national security expert Juliet Kayam on the sedition charges of the Proud Boys on January 6th. Also, Amy O'Leary, Executive Director of Strategies for Children, an advocacy group pushing for more affordable childcare access in Massachusetts.
Oh, you know what else we got tomorrow? Unless I'm mistaken. I think I'm not mistaken. Matthew Gilbert from the Globe is going to come. He's a TV critic, and he's going to come and tell us about all the good TV shows, the best ones to watch right now.
All the good summer launches.
Yes.
Our crew is Zoe Matthews, Aidan Connolly, Mackenzie Farkas, and Rebecca Tauber, with an additional support from Gia Orsino. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker, and our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. A special thanks today to the BPL engineer, my longtime friend, Steve Varashi.
Yes, thank you very much. Steve did a lot of fixing to get us organized here today. We were a little disorganized when we first got here. Jared Bowen, thank you very much for filling in
My
for the
pleasure.
Vacationing Jim Brad. I usually say he's slithering around, but
That's the first time this week you've used that word.
I don't know if he's slithering. I haven't been informed, but maybe we'll spot him slithering somewhere before the week is over. Anyway, I am Marjorie Egan.
I'm Jared Bowen.
Thanks again for tuning in today. I hope you can tune in tomorrow. Meanwhile, I hope you have a great day. It's gorgeous out. Hope you can enjoy it.